This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.
Can I welcome everyone to the Police and Crime Committee meeting? This morning we'll be holding our monthly question and answer session with the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime. Unfortunately, we do not have the police in attendance again. On behalf of the entire committee, we are not happy about this. We have written to the police, we've written to the Mayor, we asked the Mayor for this meeting, he hasn't come. You gentlemen are going to be fabulous, I know, but nevertheless, we do really require police to attend these meetings. Please make sure, colleagues, that your electronic devices are switched to silent mode to avoid any interruptions. Can I ask our clerk, Lauren Harvey, if any apologies have been received?
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies for absence from the Deputy Chair, Assembly Member Roberts, for whom Assembly Member Bakari is attending as a substitute.
Thank you, and thank you for coming. Can I ask the committee to note the recommendations set out at item 2 and ask if members have any other interests to declare? I'll take silence as no. Can we note the completed and outstanding actions arising from previous meetings of the committee and the additional correspondence sent and received? Thank you. Now, can the committee note the letter from the Mayor to advise of his proposed appointment of Kaya Comer-Schwartz to the office of Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime? And can we agree, please, whether to hold a confirmation hearing for the proposed appointment of Kaya Comer-Schwartz to the office of Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime? Agreed. Thank you. Can I now ask the committee to agree to request that Kaya Comer-Schwartz provides, in advance of the confirmation hearing, an updated CV and any other information in relation to the proposed appointment? And so now we move on to our main item of business, and I would like to welcome our guests. Darren Meffam, Interim Chief Executive Officer of MOPAC. Welcome, we haven't seen you here before, so it's good to see you, thank you. And Kenny Bowie, who is a regular here to us. Thank you again, Kenny. Kenny is the Director of Strategy and MPS Oversight in MOPAC. Right, so I'm going to start with the questions. To you both, really, whichever one of you can answer. Has the Stop and Search Charter been finalised? If not, can you update the committee on progress towards publication of the Charter? And why has it been delayed?
Thank you.
Darren.
Thank you, Chair. We've been working with the Met on the engagement and consultation on the development of Stop and Search Charter, we being MOPAC team, and the team has also attended a number of those sessions and helped to facilitate the final session to co-design it with a group of young people, young Londoners. We've also been working with the Met to involve the Stop and Search Community Monitoring Network in that process as well, and they've had an opportunity to engage and input into that charter, and we're on track to launch. The Met are on track to launch that before Christmas.
This is a little bit disconcerting, I should say. This was originally due by October 23. Then it was due in March of this year, and it's still not been published. I mean, what has caused this delay? Because we just keep being told it's going to be in a few more months.
So I think what has caused, I think one, the Met would dispute that there was a delay. I think they feel that October 2023 was when they would have kicked off this work rather than when they would have concluded the work. We can debate the wording precisely of that, but after that it's been a case of making sure that they do the correct engagement and that they make sure that they feel this is going to actually make a meaningful difference when it comes in. So I think taking the time to get it right is correct. I don't think that means that the Met have been standing still on all of this. They've obviously been doing their community-led training, which MOPAC helped them to set up. They've also been running their precision stop and search pilot within a couple of boroughs, looking at particular wards and how that relates to violence and making sure that they learn the lessons from that and that can input into their charter as well. And they have been thinking about what the future of the sort of community stop and search monitoring groups can be. So it's not the case that they've just stood still, and there's obviously a lot of learning and a lot of understanding of how procedural justice plays into this and all the work that they need to do to make stop and search a more effective tool.
Yeah, but one would have assumed they knew that anyway, which is, it begs the question, why were we constantly told it was on its way? When it clearly wasn't then. I mean, we've just been misinformed. We've been told it's going to be in a couple of months, and it hasn't been.
Well, I would repeat, I think it is going to be in a couple of months now.
Yeah, I know. That's what we keep hearing. And everything you've just said, I agree with, but surely they did that before. I mean, if the police were here to answer, perhaps they could come up with a different answer. But the only answer we've ever had from them as a committee is due in a couple of months' time. Stop and search is such a prickly issue. We really need a charter to be there so that we can hold the police to account. Well, so that you can hold the police to account for it. This constant delay does not help, Kenny.
I think it's even more important that communities are able to use that charter in order to be able to hold the police to account for it, and I think that's why it's important that the co-design and the way it is done is done using the correct process is so important.
So you're telling me they weren't using the correct processes before, which is why it's taken another year?
So they've not had a stop and search charter in quite this way before. I'm not saying what they were doing before was correct or incorrect. I'm talking about the process of co-designing this, and this is a new way that the Met has wanted to do this, something that the new Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner brought in which we are supportive of.
Yeah, because they're not new anymore either, are they? I mean, to start with, we understood why lots of things were delayed, but that doesn't wash forever. We were told it would be out by October, I think, 23. So here we are, October 24. You're not guaranteeing when it's coming out, and
it's not for us to guarantee.
Sorry?
I said it's not for us, it's the Met.
No, it's for the Met, and they're not here. I mean, that is not your fault, but this is our frustration on this committee. They should be answering this question, because if not, don't tell us a year ago that it's due any moment, you know. Okay, Lord Bailey.
Just a quick couple of things. I'm going to throw them all together for the expediency of time. Of course, Kenny, it's easy to say you should involve the communities. That's a great defence, but you know, what does that actually mean? So I would like a question to how young are the people that are being spoken to, because we know how young people feel about stop and search, but we also know they don't know too much about the entirety of what the police need to do, and also a lot of the people who are stopped by the police are young but are not minors. Are they involved in the conversation? It'd be interesting to know. And what are MOPAC doing to speed up the process? Because as the chair says, stop and search is one of the thorniest issues we have. So for something to be a year late would suggest that MOPAC and the police haven't been pushing hard enough. Again, a whole entire year late. And if you care for those communities, of course, that's a year extra for those communities to flap around and wonder what's going on. So could you let me know how young are these people, and what are you doing as an organisation to speed up this process?
So I'll need to come back to precisely the detail of how young the people are, but my understanding is that they have been working with people who are sort of at least as young as 16 on all of this. But if I'm incorrect on that, I will write to.
Okay, if you could write to us, I'd be grateful for that. Thank you.
And it's absolutely. I mean, again, I think we would dispute the fact that it's late in that sense, a year on, but we would, we're certainly aware of the urgency around getting this done and making sure that communities are.
But have you done something specific? Could you point to something that you've done to help the police realise that this needs to be done quickly?
We've been continually engaging with the Met on this, and we've been attending these events, and we certainly highlight the importance of this, and we are running lots of work on stop and search at the moment for different bits of research as well. Which
okay, can I just ask that you push the Met on this? Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
That's heard.
Thank you. And you can't dispute that it's late, Kenny. It is late. That is it. I don't know why you would try to dispute that. Assembly Member Bakari.
Thank you, Chair. I'm talking about the Met's Race Action Plan, which does include quite a few actions from MOPAC itself, and particularly when it comes to the work on recruitment as well. I'm interested in that area before I talk about the vetting that I know that you're involved with. Considering what's happened recently with the Chris Carber case, the impact that has on the black community, what can you tell me about the work that's going on to improve those relationships with the black community and bring forward those new recruits that we desperately need from the black community?
Thank you. If I can pick up some of the general points you made about the plan, and then perhaps Kenny can pick up some of the more detailed things around where we are with recruitment at the moment. I think the general feel of where we are with this is that this is the first time that the Met have had any such plan at all. In this for many years, having a plan that does the things it's trying to do. So that's really, really positive. And I think as well as the recruitment, I think there's a number of elements in there that are also equally important. So the work around addressing their problems around disproportionality in the misconduct system, the pledges to review wellbeing and support for officers, and that does play directly into the work on recruitment and retention of staff. We've also touched on stop and search and the clear commits in there. So that's quite an impressive package. It's a good direction of travel for the Met to have taken. Of course, it is just a plan. and we won't really know how good it is until we start to see the implementation, but that direction of travel is positive. And I think also the steps that the Met have taken to engage with Londoners in the development and dissemination of that plan. So we've been involved in not only the content of that plan, but also how they communicate with and engage with Londoners. That's really quite critical. A bit like the last question, it's not just about what you do, it's how you do it and what kind of support and engagement you can build along the way. We did give them sort of help on specific things, and particularly around that engagement, we help them to target particular local communities, and they work with typically voluntary sector or social community sector, i.e. people independent of the Met, to facilitate those conversations with local communities. And a similar thing happened with groups of young people, again working with a third sector organisation, so it was independent of the Met to facilitate those conversations. And both those approaches, I think, are really quite important in kind of bridging the gap between how the Met is perceived and where we want the Met to be perceived. So it's a helpful step. There's also been a lot of engagement with the public more broadly through a public survey, and also we help the Met as well to engage with specific black-led community groups, including groups that weren't perhaps always most supportive of the Met. So they didn't just go for the people that were friendly. They did that engagement, and I think those kinds of steps are really important to start to get to grips with trust and confidence. And it sets the plan on a good footing. We do know that there was a missed opportunity to engage with the London Policing Board. That was a missed opportunity, and that could have been done better. But there are some positive things around that.
There's that continuing work that you're doing, but will this just add another challenge because of the increased tensions that we're now seeing? And will there be a review to the way you can continue this process? Are you doing a new approach in terms of, this is big right now, what's happening in the community? In some ways, we're going back steps, aren't we? We're going to have to do some more concerted effort and maybe even a new approach. Is that even considered in the work that you're doing?
Well, the plan itself was only launched in, I think, 29th of September, so just over a month ago. So that was just a launch. I think the strands of work that come out of that have each got their own place to play in that. So we've talked about stop and search. There's the work on staff wellbeing. That's got to keep progressing. The work on addressing disproportionality in the misconduct system, that's got its own particular focus. And I think those things need to progress. In fact, they will progress. And it's probably, as ever, more important that those things are taken forward.
So let's talk about the vetting policy and the MOPAC's working to improve the external scrutiny of the vetting. What are the timescales, and will this new vetting policy, how will it look? How will MOPAC improve that external scrutiny of vetting specifically?
If we talk about just where we are with vetting and time frame, there's been national work around vetting. So the IRPC changed their approach last year. The Policing College, the College of Policing, are changing that approach. There's more change imminent that we're expecting from them, and the Met have anticipated that in their new approach. So that approach has been changed. That anticipates stuff that's going to be coming for all forces. So that's already in place. That enhanced vetting has started. So there's a different approach where there's an annual refresh of vetting of all officers using systems that are already in place, but doing that annually, and also bringing in alongside the performance development framework an annual assessment of where the officers are in terms of their approach. So those things are live, and we'll be using our normal oversight mechanisms to sort of track how that's happening, and that's something we pick up in conversations which are also part of oversight. So that's live for us.
And my last question is on the action plan that it commits to a biannual progress report. You're expecting to publish that first one fairly soon, and what will the baseline comparators be on that?
I think they've said the first publication will be March of next year. They've published, obviously, I think as part of the annex, the performance measures or the matrices that they'll be using for that. And I think they are just working through what the baseline will be, but I would imagine the baseline will be the best data they have at the available date upon which they publish the LRAP, because that would be the most obvious way of measuring progress.
And the baseline comparators, are you going to be clearly transparent and open in terms of how you're going to publish that as well?
Yeah, I mean,
Brilliant.
well, not us, it'd be the Met to publish it, but yeah, we certainly want to be transparent.
Okay, thank you.
Assembly Member Moema.
Good morning to both of you. I don't remember exactly when it was, but we had the chair of the Black Police Association come to our committee and talk about, in the context of Casey, the work and experiences of black officers and staff, and some criticisms of the development of the action plan. And I just wondered, now that it has been launched, how you're going to address some of those criticisms. I guess that's mainly for Darren, around involvement in its development, but also the focus of it. It felt quite top-down, was one of the criticisms.
Well, I think it's an ongoing process for the Met, and I think one of the mechanisms that we know that they're looking at is how they share a lot of the cultural stuff that they're trying to do across the Met more broadly. There's a very large training program which is on its way. I think 33,000 officers are going to go through this training program. It's quite an extensive training program. It doesn't just deal with these issues, but it deals with quite a lot of things that they need to pick up on. So certainly around familiarisation with the new Met for London plan and what that means, what the cultural expectations are, how that translates into those roles for those individual people in the Met. Awareness around the importance of violence against women and girls, and all of the other cultural and the race action plan elements as well. So there is as I say, an extensive programme that complements the programme that's already there for leadership in the Met as well, which is much more focused on how do the leaders in the Met translate those things so it's meaningful for their staff and felt by their staff. Our oversight of that at this stage is now attending some of those sessions, watching what's happening, giving feedback, helping them shape the programme as it develops. So I think that probably is the approach that's most relevant to your question.
Thank you. Assembly Member Lord Bailey.
Oh, sorry. The Race Action Plan includes a commitment to work with MOPAC to update and improve community scrutiny. How will MOPAC do this, and what performance measures will you use to show improvement?
So we are just at the outset of setting up the programme to do this between ourselves and the Met in a joint way. We are creating the sort of programme initiation document on all of that, and that will include what do we think the outcome measures and the success measures should be. But as I said, that's something which is currently being sort of led between myself and DAC Millichap in the Metropolitan Police, and we're just setting that programme up, so I can't answer that question precisely at the moment, but there's lots of work going, and we're very happy to be transparent about that once we have it set up.
Who will own this piece of work? So in a year's time, 2 years' time, and we're looking back and we've decided that the KPIs have been hit or not, who's responsible for that?
A mixture. It's a joint programme between the Met and MOPAC. Ultimately, the SRO and the MOPAC side would be me, so if it doesn't work, that'll be on me.
Is there an equivalent of you in the Met who'll also bear responsibility?
At the moment, I'm working with Deputy Assistant Commissioner Helen Millichap on this.
So that rank will hold it. It might not be her as
well, I mean, at the moment that's what I'm working on. Once we've finalised the PIDs, the programme, that'll set out with clarity who the senior responsible officers are for all of this.
And who else is consulting on this? Are you speaking to communities? Are you speaking to government? Who else are you speaking to about this race action plan, so it isn't just how MOPAC feel and how the
action plan more generally, or the community scrutiny side of it?
The action plan more generally.
So the action plan more generally, we take this and consider it at the Disproportionality Board, which includes a lot of criminal justice partners. We have our quarterly public meetings where the race action plan and different elements of that will clearly be a key part, and the Met has sort of ongoing community engagement at every level, where I'm sure this will continue to be discussed.
When you settle on the content of this action plan and what the KPIs are for that, how will it be displayed? Where would we find that information?
So the measures which are going to be used, I believe, are in the annex of the race action plan itself, and they've committed to biannual updates, which I think the first one is March of next year, which I think will be published on their website.
Okay, and we'll receive that in this committee. It'll be sent.
If you want us to send you that, that's absolutely fine.
that would be very good, I imagine, through you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm coming to Assemblymember Garbutt in a minute. Can I just ask you, though, there's an external reference group which appears to have been created in October 2023. Is that still in operation?
Yeah, that's still in operation. They attend the MOPAC Disproportionality Board, and they help to hold us in MOPAC to account for how we work in tackling disproportionality across the whole range of criminal justice matters.
Because I couldn't find any details of it. Can you write to us and tell us who's on that board?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where you mean? And are the minutes anywhere to find?
So we can send you all the details about it. That's absolutely fine.
Are they published, though?
The minutes, so the ERG minutes, I don't believe their minutes are published, in that they kind of meet in an ad hoc way.
Do you think they should be published?
I can take that back and have a think about it.
I'd be grateful if you did. In the meantime, if you could write to us, that would be fabulous. Thank you.
So, Chair, can I just quickly? You've made a commitment to give a simplified, more effective scrutiny model. What are the features of that model?
So I think what we want is to make sure that it's it's transparent, in that people can actually, communities themselves can actually see what is happening out of it, what are the outcomes, how is this impacting and benefiting the Met Police's practice, and therefore Londoners as a whole, that it's representative of the communities involved, so that it's not just, so that if you're in, I don't know, I live in Lambeth, so that the community group actually represents Lambeth as a whole. And we quite often struggle to attract younger people to do these sort of things, even though those are the people who are most impacted by these powers, that it looks potentially at a wider range of police powers rather than just stop and search. We know, for example, that, I don't know, people are worried about complaints into the police, or they're worried about tasering, those sort of things. I think that's what we'll be looking at as part of this.
All of those things which you just said, I think everybody wants us. I suppose the question is how. It's easy to say these things. You may even get them into your structure, but how? How would a person who is not a part of one of these community groups, and you speak to someone,
communication, transparency.
How? Where would it be? Even me as an assembly member, where will that information be for me to find easily?
So that's one of the things which obviously the programme which we're setting up will need to consider. What is the best way of us being able to communicate that and not us necessarily as MOPAC or the Met themselves, but how will these groups be able to communicate they're doing in a way which you as assembly members or members of that community are actually able to go and see what has been happening and what the outcome of those things are. That's absolutely a key point that we're going to try and address.
Thank you for that. Can I just make a plea that we don't always concentrate on community groups, because they are the usual suspects and they have a very loud voice, but there's people outside of those groups who are equally as important.
No, I think that's very valid.
Yeah. Assemblymember Garbutt.
Morning. Just to pick up on a couple of things that have been mentioned, just as an overarching goal, obviously becoming an anti-racist organisation, we can all support, but I think as other colleagues have mentioned, some of the specifics and the kind of accountability we feel is lacking. And I just wondered if you've got if the Met have got an actual target of when they plan to be an anti-racist organisation. Like, is there because I couldn't see that in the plan. It's got a lot of kind of commitments, and obviously the KPIs will be helpful to actually see when those things are going to be achieved, but without that it's quite disconcerting.
So I don't think there's a specific date. I think the Met's view would be as soon as is possible on all of that, but I don't think they've put a specific date in the LRAP by which they're seeking to.
Which is my worry, because I think if you don't set a date to something, it's hard to work towards it. So if KPIs are being set, it surely has to have an overarching goal to move towards.
Okay, I'm done.
It'd be great if we could hold them to account and have that overarching goal. And then just to pick up on something that has also been said this morning, I know a few of us have different views on stop and search and its effectiveness. And just to go back to the Charter, I wanted to just ask how MOPAC's helping the Met to ensure that it's healing old wounds from traumas that have been caused from years of bad stops.
So we do. So I think the best way of doing that is by making sure that stop and search is as effective as it can possibly be going forward. When we have looked at this through the PAS or Public Attitude Survey, we do sort of say, was your first interaction with the police a stop and search? What does that do? And you do see that does lead to a reduction in people's sort of trust and confidence. You also see, though, that if the stop and search was conducted in a way where, I mean, it's a bit of a technical term, but it was procedurally just, basically if it was polite and done properly and it was effective in that sense, that you see a much, much lower level of reduction, in fact, not huge at all. So I think that, making sure that you have that community-led training, that there is procedural justice and what the Met do, and the Met would absolutely recognise that as well. And that is something we've helped set up with community-led training and bringing people into that. We're showing them the data from the Public Attitude Survey, which would back all of that up. We're also doing on stop and search different bits of research, some big data research, looking at what do we think the right level or the expected level, if you can call it that, of disproportionality would be. We're looking at decision making within the Met, we're looking at body worn video, and we're looking at all of the grounds which the Met collected during 2023 to see what we can understand and glean from that. And that's probably going to be one of the biggest bits of research when put together that's been done on stop and search in this country or anywhere, and all of that will help to inform Met practice in the future to avoid what you're talking about there.
Great. So it's kind of showing that we're listening to communities, and by making those improvements, we hope to kind of apologise and heal those, the kind of impact that's had historically. Thank you.
Assembly Member Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, panel. Kenny, I want to refer to one of the answers you've just given about the difficulty of engaging young people. It's not new. We hear this all the time, and I really want to nail down what it is that the Met are doing to make those engagements happen, because the voices of young people in all the processes that are happening within the Met are absolutely essential. And I'm a little bit concerned that for some time now, all we hear is it's difficult to engage young people. What is it that is being done in a concrete way to make that engagement happen?
So the Met has its new children's strategy, which it's brought out. It has committed to being a child-first organisation. It did engage with lots of children throughout that. They obviously have set up new dedicated, strengthened neighbourhood teams where with sort of dedicated supers for each of the areas. And I know that a big part of the push is for engagement across the piece, not just with children, but with all sort of local residents. And I know that they are at the moment looking more generally about how they bring those neighbourhood teams together, so that, for example, people with the skills which are needed to engage with those young people and with other different communities are put to the best use possible in that way.
Thank you. It does sound a bit nebulous, because you've just said in the last few minutes that it is difficult to engage young people. And as I said, we've been hearing this for a long time now. You've talked now about, some of the actions that have been taken, but I would really like some concrete examples of where it's worked. Also, you mentioned Lambeth in your previous answer. I know that there are some superb local officers in Lambeth who are absolutely dedicated to making these processes work. What is actually happening? For example, are youth centres being engaged in this process? And if so, how? And why is it that up until now that engagement isn't taking place in the way that it should? And what do you perceive to be the issues holding that back?
So I think when I was talking about the difficulty previously, I was saying about attracting people to join the community scrutiny panels, and that which has been difficult, in particular for MOPAC, are getting younger people to join, for example, the independent custody visiting scheme. And we have gone and spoken to people about what are the things that they would like, or what are the things that might make them more interested to join these sort of panels and properly engage with it. And some of what we've heard back is it's not necessarily about the time or about this, it's actually about what would they gain from that. Like, is there training which will allow them to really benefit from things? Are there opportunities to develop? How will they be mentored through this? Because they might feel slightly intimidated by stepping into a slightly different organisation. Will they get training and how to understand data and how to do all of this? So we are thinking about how we build that into all of the project initiation document stuff. Yes, in terms of do we and do the Met engage with, I don't know whether you call them youth clubs or youth workers or people who have direct engagement with the police. For example, we have the pilot up in Hackney looking at a different way of doing community scrutiny, and we have people on there who are youth leaders or who are in education as a sort of way of getting, because they obviously have a much greater insight into what young people are thinking or doing, because they deal with them every single day, than I will do from my sort of perch. So yes, we absolutely do engage with them and want to sort of use that expertise.
All right, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Colleagues, we've got 50 minutes late and we're nowhere near through the first set of questions. So if we can all pick up speed, I would be grateful. Assembly Member Moema.
Thank you. So one of your commitments is around improving victim voice, and I would really appreciate hearing from you what the Victims' Voice forums do, how many have taken place, and how these have been balanced so that black communities are able to attend, and which ones, or how many have been for black communities in London. Because obviously there is a disproportionate impact of black Londoners being the victims of crime, and those neighbourhoods and areas where they live and work are relatively under-policed. So if we could hear from that, would be really good.
Where we are at the moment, there's been a pilot, so we're about a year into a pilot of a Victims' Voice forum, and I haven't actually had a chance to attend one of those yet, so I can't speak from first-hand experience as to how that's working, but maybe Kenny can in a moment. But the lessons from that and the learning from that is allowing us to feedback from those victims back into different bits of the police process. That's the mechanism. Building on that, we are, with the Met, establishing a number of other forums that are much more specifically focused. So a forum that's particularly focused on victims and survivors of violence against women and girls, for example, is a standalone forum. A separate forum that's specifically focused on black victims of crime. One that's focused on LGBTQ+ victims of crime. Another that's looking at victims of crime who have disabilities. And another one working with parents of young people who have been victims of crime, so it's a slightly different focus. So I think one of the lessons that's coming out from the pilot is that it's good, and we're getting feedback which is able to be fed back into the Met. But I think as you imply by your question, there's more value to be extracted by being a bit more focused in the things that we set up next. And those forums are being set up, and the plan is for them to be up and running by the spring of next year.
So, but where will they operate? How many will they be? Specifically for black Londoners, how will people know that they can contribute and potentially shape what you're doing? Because most black Londoners are not involved in criminal justice, but their voices are underrepresented in some of the work that the Met does, and that was borne out in lots of reporting about the Met's systemic failures of the last few years. So some specifics would be really good, specifically those that target black Londoners.
Yeah, thanks. So obviously the people who are on this, I think your first question was about how often this Victims' Voice Forum is met. I believe it's 8 or 9 times over the last 12 months. If that's incorrect, I'll obviously correct that. The people who have been selected are all people who have actual lived experience. They are obviously victims. So the way that that's selected is through consultation and help specifically including using the London's Independent Victims Commissioner, who has a wide range of contact with people across a wide range of backgrounds and people who have been in the Met Police. When this does happen, obviously it can be quite traumatic for the victims on occasion. We have, I believe, a bereaved mother, we have victims of domestic abuse, we have victims of serious sexual offences on the Victims' Voice Forum. At the moment, it's a good representative group for obvious reasons. We don't talk about names, etc. But we have, I mean, just by way of, they contribute to the information leaflets which would go to victims. The Met would bring that along and discuss that sort of stuff with them. They would bring the sort of victim transformation work that they're doing and talk about that, so that they can actually hear directly from the Victims' Voice Forum about what would that actually mean in practice for you, and really get into the depths of that. We have support at each of the meetings for victims in case they are re-traumatised. We try our best to take a trauma-informed approach to how all of that engagement works. The next step will be launched in sort of 2 stages, because obviously it takes a while to bring people online and get them up to speed. First, it is starting with, as I understand it, the VOG group, the disability group, and it's now gone out my head slightly, and then the second group will be Black Londoners and the parents of children who are impacted by it. So that there'll be 2 phases done in that way, and it may be that there's some sort of overlap between people in the main Victim Voice Forum and those subgroups. We're just working through the details of that to make sure that people don't feel there's too much pressure on them to contribute across too much of a range of things.
Actually, to help, because it was a really important question, to help, we'll write to you with things that we don't think have been answered fully, if that's okay, because we'd all be interested to see what comes back. Could you also give us the location of where these forums are? I'd like to make sure that we know that they are spread around London, not in just specific areas. That would be helpful. So we'll put it in writing, and perhaps you'll be able to answer us. Lovely, thank you very much. Assembly Member Desai.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Kenny, if I could ask you about the Notting Hill Carnival. So what conversations and actions have MOPAC and the Met been involved in since Carnival to learn from this year's event and to determine what measures should be put in place for next year, particularly around crowd density, to avoid a potentially life-threatening crash?
Can I?
Sorry, yeah.
That's okay.
I was going to come to later.
I think from MOPAC's perspective, our role as MOPAC as an organisation is perhaps more limited than you might suspect from your question. So we have a particular role in terms of overseeing the Met's operation on the day of the Carnival, and obviously we talk to the Met in the run-up to the Carnival, and those the sort of questions about how it's working, how it's going to happen, is something that we do at a more operational level. But in terms of looking forward, it's much more a GLA function around that. Firstly, the Carnival is organised by an independent organisation. The GLA, in terms of its event management, in terms of it as a funder, the GLA in terms of its role chairing the Gold Command, that's where it comes in. So it's not really a MOPAC function in the way that perhaps is implied. I know that, as with any event, there is always a review, and there is a review, and you're right about the concerns that you mentioned there about crushing and so on. But that review isn't something that MOPAC are actively a part of. It's a review that's involving the organisers, the boroughs, and the GLA, and the police as a provider, but not MOPAC.
Well, I beg to differ. I think you should be more involved. How much money does City Hall give to the Carnival?
About £945,000.
145.
945.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So about nearly £1 million. Well, I suggest. I mean, the mayor is a high-profile attendee of the Carnival. I mean, I would actually think you should play a far more active role. Can I actually draw to your attention? Back in 2017, I think it was January, Chair, we produced a report on making Notting Hill a better and safer Carnival. And our conclusion was that the status quo is not an option. We had a holding reply from MOPAC. That was sometime in 2017. No response ever since then. 7 years on, our findings in 2017 are still, if not more, relevant as ever. What are you going to say about that? I mean, I don't know if you were around in 2017, so I don't hold you personally responsible, but I think that given the various issues around Notting Hill over the years, we commented on the lack of professionalism in terms of and there was no disrespect to the organisers. This is the world's second biggest carnival. I don't think they even have a sponsor. We spend, what, £11.8 million policing the carnival. So, I mean, it is a multi-agency approach. Of course, you've got the 2 local councils, you've got the organisers. But look, I've been to a carnival every year since I was elected in 2016, both to the Command and Control Centre, which I must say is a very impressive operation. Hats off to the police there. Also, with the police walking around Carnival and then doing my own observations as well. And there are some very disturbing issues still, ongoing. So can we expect a response to our 2017 report?
So what I would say is, I understand the point you're making about the mayor should be involved. I suppose my point back would be the mayor is involved, but it's just through the GLA, which is the main funder, as in the focus is having a safe carnival and allowing people to celebrate their cultural heritage. Now, a large part of what needs to happen, or what the Metropolitan Police would argue that needs to happen in this space, is a greater number of stewards to provide crowd control. It's to understand ingress and egress at key points. Neither of those are particularly MOPAC issues. Those are issues that you would expect to be picked up as part of the strategic funding group, which is chaired by the Mayor's Chief of Staff, and areas where absolutely that we should look at. I think the Mayor has said at the last London Policing Board that when he's been to the Carnival, there are things he's seen that he can't unsee, and there does need to be a look to make sure that things are as safe as possible to avoid some of the crushing, and it does need to professionalise in the way that you have talked about there. So that is ongoing, and I will pass that back to the GLA team, that request, but it is very clearly within the way that the structures within City Hall and MOPAC work. It does sit with the City Hall group. That's not me trying to be sloppy-shouldered, that's just where things are.
Much of the time, so leave it at that.
Well, yes, except I'm very disappointed, as I'm sure all of you are. We've got a situation in Notting Hill where people keep moving responsibility, but at the end of the day, well, they do, and you are Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime and oversee the Metropolitan Police. The Commissioner said he didn't want a Hillsborough event, meaning the crush, which indicates to most people that this could be very, very serious for Londoners. We've been, all of us, this is, most of us agree on this. It is becoming more and more dangerous. It's a victim of its own success. And I'm just disappointed when people say, well, it isn't our responsibility. It really needs to be brought together so that people grab this by the neck and see how they can either make it a lot safer or do something else. But because you're the MOPAC, I was hoping for something different from that. We are on massive time constraints here. We'll come back to this without doubt, because certainly we are very vexed by it. Assembly Member Best.
Thank you. Good morning. Darren, do you believe officers are experiencing a crisis of confidence in fulfilling their everyday duties?
Similarly, you mean in the police rather than MOPAC?
Yes. Most people in MOPAC, I feel, are probably quite comfortable, but that's maybe a different comment.
I think picking up on the last point, I wasn't here in 2017. I've only been here for 4 months, so I haven't. I wouldn't say my knowledge is as seasoned as Ken is, but it's certainly the case that the Met are alive to issues of morale and how the police feel, and that's, I guess, the same in any organisation. We certainly see, I think, and the Met are alive to this, the impact in terms of recruiting officers. That it's not necessarily for many people a job that people aspire to go into, and the more difficult policing looks and feels, this is a national thing, the more difficult it is to attract people in. So clearly the Met are focused on that.
Can I just pick you up there, Darren, because it's not a national thing, is it? Because in every constabulary across the country, recruitment targets were met. The only place that didn't happen is the Met. This is a uniquely London problem, with the police in London not looking like a sort of career that people want to go into. or the sort of career that parents want their sons and daughters to go into and would encourage them into?
I think it is generally the case that recruitment is difficult in all forces. It's certainly probably, you're right to say that it's more acute in London, and that's partly because of the scale. I mean, when there were particular targets applied for recruitment, you know, the target for London, because of the scale of the force, was just way bigger than anybody else's, which makes it particularly challenging. But we know that all public services in London have problems recruiting, and that's a feature of the cost of living. Things that have changed and have helped to a certain extent is lifting the requirement that officers had to be London-based. That's helping to a degree, but to some extent that means we're just perhaps looking more broadly in other places where there are existing police forces trying to recruit. So those, well, not excusing those, but those are live issues for the Met. The Met has annual staff surveys. It sort of tracks things like mood and how people are feeling in the Met, which I think was part of your question as well. And there's many staff forums and engagement that goes on in the Met around a lot of the programmes that we've talked about, which is taking the temperature all the time.
Unfortunately, though, taking the temperature, filling out a survey doesn't improve the confidence and morale. I mean, Kenny, do you have any firm kind of action that's been taken to improve confidence and morale of officers?
So I think there's different things in play here. So your initial question was, is there a crisis of confidence in officers doing their day-to-day jobs? I think the honest answer to that is it depends what your day-to-day job is. If you look at the Met's pipeline for recruiting into the detective pathway, for example, that remains quite strong. You don't hear the sort of discussions about that. What the Commissioner has talked about is whether there is falling confidence amongst officers to use some of their powers. He's particularly highlighted stop and search previously. Now, there's two answers. There's two sort of answers to that. One is there public support for the officers more generally? I would say most of the public does support officers and how they use their powers, and does support the need and understand why those powers are there. There is then a secondary question, I suppose, which goes to what can be done internally to provide support for that, provide training so that officers feel confident themselves when they come to use those powers. What support can there be from line managers, and making sure within the Met, making sure that sort of stuff happens. So I wouldn't ever describe it as a crisis of confidence, but will there be people who have confidence issues around this? Yes. Do I think there are probably multiple and competing factors in that? Yes.
And we know that obviously there, specifically, you raise it there, Kenny, it's the type of duty you're carrying out. So, for example, those officers in transport duties, we know they don't feel supported now, asking for tickets. Again, firearms officers handing in weapons because they don't feel supported. You talked about public support, but actually there's political support as well, isn't there? Because I think when we look at the recent case of Chris Carber, and the Mayor was right in reaching out to the family and you know, sending the heartfelt message that he did, but I didn't see any of that for Martin Blake, the police officer whose life also changed that day. And I wonder, was he supported? Because his name was named in the public, and he hasn't had that support politically and publicly.
So I think the Mayor is on record offering support to all firearms officers, and recognising the very difficult job that they have to do day in, day out. I mean, they are genuinely people who run towards situations that the majority of us, anybody sensible, would be heading the other way at 100 miles an hour. So I can say that there is that support. I don't want to talk too much about the case specifically, because there is obviously still IOPC and other considerations going on. But sorry, but I would say I think the Mayor has been on record as showing his support for the firearms officers.
I would say I don't think that's true in terms of the personal case. I know he's recognised firearms officer, but not in terms of supporting that police officer who has also had his life changed. And I think, actually, Kenny, that's something that really does need to be addressed in these day-to-day actions. We're never going to give police confidence to carry out actions day to day if they don't feel that political support for what they do. I'd love to go further, but I know the time.
No, I'm going to intervene. These are political questions, which you are absolutely right to ask, 100%. It's not right to ask officers those. You are correct, and I would like to say we should support firearm officers. I agree with what you've said there, Kenny. They do run towards danger. Thank God for it, or we'd all be in a very bad place. I take on board what you say. Leave it for a deputy mayor. And then I'll support you 100%. Okay, we're moving on away from this. I'm going to steam through, Kenny, the next 3 questions because we're running horribly late. So this is about the Mayor's Draft Police and Crime Plan 25-29. When will the Mayor's Draft Police and Crime Plan be published for consultation?
Consultation for the plan will be in the next few weeks, and we're heading for the completion of that and the adoption of the plan by the end of the financial year. So as per the timetable.
Well, you have to. It's
exactly,
legal.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, when are we likely to get a copy? Because we obviously are all chomping at the bit to have a look and see what's on it. So give me a date. A few weeks. I've heard this too many times. I would like some sort of date, please.
I can't give you a precise date today. I think it is the next few weeks. I mean, one of the as you appreciate, that it's a political plan. At the moment, we are between deputy mayors for police and crime, and so we would like the incoming deputy mayor for police and crime, assuming that's where you get to today, to have an input into that. And that's why I can't give you a particular specific date, but it is planned for the next few weeks.
Okay, I assume it's well underway with the previous deputy mayor. It must have been, since it's got to be out there. So who have MOPAC engaged with to help inform the development of the draft plan so far?
We've been speaking to a number of partners, including the Metropolitan Police, who we've had comments from, obviously at very senior level there. We're engaging with other statutory partners. We've had meetings with certain groups such as deaf and disabled, Londoners, other groups who represent other Londoners, but that's also a pre-consultation, if I can call it that. That's taking in what people say. We also have our public attitude survey, which takes 19,200 Londoners. We have our victims surveys. We understand from stuff like Victim Voice Fora, LCJB, other groups that we have, what their views on where all of this is. So there has been fairly extensive gathering of sort of voices, data, evidence to inform this, and then obviously we will come out further, and very happy to come and speak to all of you as a committee about all of this when it comes out, if you would find that helpful.
Well, we're trying to plan that, but we've got to have some sort of date because we can't plan meetings when we have no idea when it's coming out. What would you say are the emerging key priorities or areas of focus in the plan as it is at the moment?
Well, the emerging priorities will come directly from the Mayor's manifesto commitment, and I don't think you should expect necessarily a massive change from where we are at the moment. So things like violence against women and girls, tackling violent crime, trust and confidence in the Met, those big themes that have been consistent in the plan and consistent in the Mayor's manifesto are the kind of areas that we're looking to carry through into the police and crime plan.
Yeah, because it's a shame because they're in there and we're not doing so well on some of those points, are we? So I suppose you'll have to carry them forward. And let's hope we get there at some point. How is MOPAC planning to ensure it consults with a diverse range of Londoners? You've half answered that, Kenny. Which specific groups you've answered as well. Can I ask you, though, if you're going to all these different groups, which I'm pleased about, especially the disability groups as well, are they from all over London, or do you concentrate on specific areas of London?
So we tend to use umbrella organisations who then help bring people together for us, and then when we go out to different areas, if there are set up groups, for example, if we go and speak to one of the councils, one of the local authorities, and they say, we have this group we'd like you to come and speak to them, we're always happy to go and do that. Sorry, I see Mr. Duval has his...
Sorry, Len.
Can I just come in?
Yes, of course.
You finished your question? Because
You carry on, Assembly Member Duval.
Look, thank you very much. Look, this is a crucial piece of work, amongst other things. In the past, we've raised, everyone seems to be reviewing themselves. The MPS has got a number of views, Casey review, their own internal review, all coming together. I raised with the former Deputy Mayor, should we not review MOPAC and its relationships and how it works? And it just seems to me, all those things that you've said that are going to be in this crucial report, which is going to set the foundation stones for police activity and others' activity in terms of tackling crime, why are we not reviewing MOPAC, and what's your view about it, and should we not? Is this not a good time to review those relationships, to look at we've already seen the policing board, I think, establishing new committees and replacing old committees, and I'm still not clear. It's about as clear as mud about who's doing what and if there's any gaps. I don't see that as a transparent way. Should we not be doing a very quick review about MOPAC, what it does, how it does it, its relationship with the MPS, crucially, in a transparent way, but also about the relationship with others in tackling crime across London, because that seems to be the mood. I would say this also, Chair, the GLA's reviewing governance relationships, so in that sense, its own governance, why shouldn't we look at the MOPAC governance role and what it does? Is it not time to?
If I can pick up that point.
Please do.
I don't know if it addresses all of your points, but certainly incoming as an interim chief executive, and I've only been here a few weeks and months. But one of the things that, for me, is a priority, and I've spoken to people about this in MOPAC and outside of MOPAC, is some of those relationships you've alluded to. So clearly, the relationship between MOPAC and the Met and how that works is key. It's something that Casey picked up in her report. And as a result of that, a piece of work that we're doing is looking at can we focus more precisely around what strategic oversight looks like and feels like, and that directly relates to the Casey recommendation. It plays to the relationship between MOPAC and the Met, and it's quite a big piece of work potentially about how we do stuff. There are parallels as well with how we engage with some other partners. So of course, MOPAC isn't. I know we're talking today about our relationship with the Met, but MOPAC is a much broader organisation than that. There are something like 250 organisations that we commission outside of the Met, and those relationships are quite key. But actually, genuinely, addressing police and crime isn't just something for MOPAC and the Met. It's about how do we marshal a lot of other parts of the system. So really thinking about our relationship with local authorities as a key part of that system. That's quite complicated because local authorities have got multiple functions that touch on this, and of course they're multiple local authorities, so that's not simple, but looking at that. And then I think the thing that was probably I don't think we're looking at changing this as such, but strengthening this is our convening role around the criminal justice system. So there's lots of parts of the criminal justice system that directly impact on people's lives, which aren't the Met, aren't necessarily directly under MOPAC's oversight, but we have an opportunity to influence that and convene that. And the work that we've been doing recently around the release from prisons, for example, is a good testament to that. Those relationships are well established, and I think it's getting that kind of mechanism in other parts of MOPAC's ambit, really.
So when do you think you're going to be able to present something to this committee and maybe to others about what that review looks like? And of course, you said it's, there's a quick review and there's a longer term review, but setting it out that everybody understands that you are looking at those issues and you're not looking at them in isolation.
I have spoken to the chair about this in principle. We haven't fixed anything in specific terms, but actually if we're going to be clear about what our oversight focus is, it makes sense for that to be transparent and developed with the right levels of input. And the offer I made was that I think this committee's got a view on that. The reason I say that is because we all want the Met to improve. That's absolutely clear. From whatever stance we take, the Met wants to improve. It's quite difficult, I think, for an organisation of that scale to be turned around and to be focused if we're not focused. And by we, I mean MOPAC, but by extension, other people that are equally looking at the Met as well. So the more we can do to make sure that not only do we align our oversight to be strategic, but it's kind of aligned with the views of others, whether that's yourselves or the HMI, for example, as much as we can, or the Home Office. That's the real trick, to try and do that. But the first step is to get the MOPAC part much more aligned.
Well, thank you for the way you've answered the question, and look forward to receiving it. No doubt will have an impact on our work programme.
Absolutely. Can I just ask you, because so many people say, my God, the amount that goes to MOPAC, because you do so much commissioning, so it goes in and comes out again. Can you just tell me how much MOPAC costs to run, as in the organisation just for MOPAC, not the commissioning?
I'm not sure I can off the top of my head. But
Approximately.
Well, I think one
ballpark. The reason I'm asking is you've had so many new members of staff recently. I'm having trouble just working out how much goes to you. So you're the chief executive. How much do you have to spend on your officers?
And the reason I suppose that I'm being a little hesitant is because MOPAC is quite a complex organisation. So there's a lot of staff that are under MOPAC's on MOPAC's books, but actually aren't really MOPAC. So if you take, for example, the Violence Reduction Unit, that's...
No, I know that. That's why I'm asking the question, because I had trouble working it out. Being the chief executive, I know you must be aware of how much money you've got for your specific organisation. Ballpark, around what amount?
I'd like to come back to you with that, because there's different pots of money. There's the operational cost.
I know, otherwise I'd know the answer.
Well,
as you're the chief executive, I was rather hoping you'd know how much money was going into your organisation for that specific work, not for commissioning.
Yeah, I would come back to you with a more accurate position afterwards.
I'm only asking for a ballpark figure.
I mean, the total is around 80 million. I think it's about 77 million in total is our budget for this year, which will be made up of a mixture of things. Some of that will be grants, which come in from Home Office and Ministry of Justice, which are essentially passported through. So I, off the top of my head, I'm afraid I can't give you the exact mix.
No, I was only looking for ballpark. So ballpark is around 77 million with all the, because there are so many different avenues of money coming in. That's good. If you could write to me with the exact amount for the committee, because I'm sure they'd love to know, and I've been asked so many times, and I've been incapable of finding it with all the different revenue streams that you have.
Chair,
Thank you very much. No, we've got to go on.
I just want to ask you something, Chair. In view of the question that Assembly Member Duval asked, shouldn't MOPAC be evaluated by an outside body because their income is so large?
Well, I think that's something we can look into. Right. I'm hoping we get through the next one. We've got less than 20 minutes. So this is about service to victims of crime. I might have to stop us halfway through, but Assembly Member Moema.
Thank you, Chair. So the HMI CFRS report was fairly woeful for the Met, and I want to know what concerns you have about the service that the Met provides to victims of crime, because across so many metrics, it's just not delivering for Londoners. And I also am really interested to know, actually I'll ask you that bit first, but just kind of to look at the way that the Met deals with children and child exploitation as well. There's obviously a large element of adultification that led to the Child Q report, but also is prevalent in the way that young Londoners and black young Londoners are victimised and are treated as mini criminals. But if we could just get an understanding of what concerns you have about the Met service to victims, because they're just not investigating and resolving crimes sensitively.
There's quite a number of elements to that. So if I just perhaps give a bit of a framework around that. Some of the work around young people and children, I think we touched on that already with the importance of the children's strategy and the child-first approach, which we are looking to the Met to really push through, and that's part of that training we talked about as well. But seeing children as children first and foremost is quite important, and that cuts across a number of those other points that you said. In terms of response to victims, we talked about some of the victims forum work, which is deliberately been set up to change that, so that that's informed by practice. So that's part of our response. We know that there's been quite a lot of investment that we're putting in to support the Met around this. So there's money around the contact centre, for example. One of the things that the HMI picked up was about the response that people reporting a crime have. So mostly they're finding it to be prompt, but there is some more work that we want to do around that. And the HMI picked up about how some of that was recorded and how that was tracked. We put other bits of funding in from the Mayor to particularly work on victims' experience, so putting in services within the Met so that victims haven't got to hunt stuff down, but they get much more signposted to what that response should be.
If I could just interrupt you.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, before all of that happens, if you have situations where the level and the experience of those officers investigating crimes are inappropriate to the crime itself, and then that victim doesn't receive support, or there are particularly sensitive areas, for example, domestic violence, people are just kind of picked up and then dropped. The level of proactivity was criticised in HMICFRS report, and just looking at the gradings under requires improvement. Some of the Met's HR issues are clearly a factor in why Londoners not getting a service that they should be, and in particular victims.
So I think the point you pick up, I think it was the lowest possible mark from HMICFRS, and it was about investigations, and obviously that goes to the initial response as well, and that does go and speak to something which HMICFRS highlighted when they put the Met into Engage, and which they continue to highlight, which is the sort of young in service, inexperienced workforce, and potentially the supervising of that, and how all of that comes through. So yes, that clearly will and is an issue, and the Met recognise that and are taking steps to try and improve that. One of the things you also talked about, the investigation, which which MOPAC commissioned around child sexual exploitation and child criminal exploitation. Again, that brought out similar issues to what you actually saw with some of the work nationally around Operation Soteria, and that was about victim-blaming language and the culture which develops around all of that. That is some of the stuff which the new Met for London for Everyone training, which is a huge commitment, if you think about 3 days for 33,000 officers, is going to pick up. We do huge surveys. We speak to 19,600 Londoners a year who report via Met, either sort of our victims via the USS or report via the Telephone and Digital Investigation Unit. In many ways, it's not often the initial contact which causes the lower satisfaction rates. It's the follow-up, it's the staying in touch and understanding what's going on with the case. The Met, we're able to feed those insights into the Met. Now, there are sticky natures there, because if you actually look at what's happened, there's been a slow downward trend, I would say, over the last year. Satisfaction levels have kind of stayed broadly stable, but we know things like providing victim information leaflets or VCOP compliance, those things are areas which would drive up satisfaction. Those are areas, again, we talked about the Victim Voice Forum, is looking at how can you design those victim information leaflets. But we still know roughly only a third of the time somebody gets one of them. So it's about pushing and understanding how the Met can deliver that stuff and deliver the follow-up, which is the victim-focused desks, and is the ability for people to contact people, which we know works. And we saw a randomised control trial, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago, which when people did contact via TDIU and they got a phone call follow-up to sort of say, here's what's actually going on with your case, because people's expectations about what happens were maybe at one level versus what did happen, we did see satisfaction improve. So it's about how do you bring all of these things together, because I think it's not just initial contact, which I hear what you're saying. I think it's also the follow-up and the keeping people informed and making sure that the expectations and then what happens are set at the right level right at the outset and then met.
Okay. And just really quickly, are you...
what a quick answer as well, please.
Okay. What support, if any, in the various structures and reviews and trainings is directly kind of starting out or provided to BCUs? Because that arguably is where a lot of the support, I'm not a fan of defund the police kind of approaches to things, but if you were to use that language, that's the part of the police that has been defunded through 14 years of austerity, neighbourhood policing.
Can we have a question quickly?
Yes, okay. How are you supporting and investing specifically in BCUs to make sure that they can provide a better service to victims at first contact and onwards?
So that is part of the new Met for London. If you look at the starting principle there, it is communities first. It is about increasing the people going into that, and there is enhanced training for people, including this, what is, I think, probably one of the biggest commitments ever from the Met in terms of 33,000 officers going through these 3 days training. You know that people, for example, on Kate teams or on RASO teams or on Jigsaw teams, they do get more specific training about that. I can see the chair looking at me, so I will.
I'm glaring at you, actually, Kenny. Thank you. We've got 3 more questions. We've got less than 10 minutes. Assembly Member Garbutt.
Thank you. Kenny, just to pick up on something you were just saying there about the importance of the follow-up information and staying in touch, which I would agree is really, really important. I recently met with the Victims Commissioner and heard about how the victim-focused desk doesn't perform quite in the way that it should be. Some feedback that it feels a bit like an answer phone and just tells people to contact their officers. So I just wondered what things you are expecting the Met to make changes in this area to increase satisfaction, if there's any resistance to any of those.
So there's no, in principle, resistance from the Met on it. I would say it's the victim information leaflets handout, which we know make a difference. It's VCOP compliance, which we know make a difference, and it's and it's getting back in touch with the victims and keeping them informed, which we know makes a difference.
Great short answer, thank you. And in 2019, you'll know that since 2019, you'll know that the Victims Commissioner has been recommending a victim care and support hub. And I just wondered what MOPAC's view of that is, and if you've had any conversations with the Met about it, because I think that's what the Victims Commissioner, obviously as an expert and speaking to victims, has recommended as best practice.
I think you can call it all sorts of different names. I think what people would recognise is there's a lack of integration in how victims are handled as they go through their criminal justice journey, and actually better integration of services and making that work more effectively for the victim is absolutely the right approach.
So is any more discussion about that happening at the moment, do you know?
Yeah, that's being led by my colleague Will Balakrishnan, but there are discussions about how better to integrate services across London and what is and what isn't possible within the different structures that we work.
Great, thank you.
It's good questions, and we'll come back to it another time. Assembly Member Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair. Is MOPAC satisfied that the Met is taking the right action to consistently assess the level of risk for all calls when considering the appropriate response, and given where that part has actually fallen in terms of the assessment, the PIL assessment? And in your answer, can you just explain what more can be done, and in what ways is MOPAC overseeing performance in this area?
So I think that what you're talking about is what's called a Thrive assessment. When something comes into Met CC, that is when they look at this. We are very confident that on initial contact that is happening fairly regularly. What the HMI CFRS picked up on was when something is handed off by Met CC to perhaps one of the other management units or handed off to a different team to do it, is the re-thriving, as they would call it, happening at an appropriate juncture to make sure that remains a dynamic risk assessment so that they are managed in that on a timely basis. That is something as part of the Met CC and investigations that our operational team continues to look at. I know the Met has been taking action on that, and I think HMI CFRS were actually reasonably positive that we are seeing some green shoots on that, even if it's not where I think they would. I don't think they would sign it off in glowing terms, but I think they do think it's going in the right direction, and the Met has a plan on it.
Thank you. Thank
you,
Chair.
Assembly, very briefly, Assembly Member Bakari.
In September, the Assistant Commissioner, Matt Twist, was concerned about whether there was a possibility of the Victims Code being completed within 6 months. Are you confident that the Met can complete compliance in 6 months of the Victims Code?
Well, 100% compliance, I think, is always challenging. I think the Met has got the right structures and systems in place to drive the improvements it was. I do think one of the things that the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner did when they came in was recognise that it had been fragmented across the Met, and in fact Assistant Commissioner Twist was put as the lead across the piece, and I think that is the right sort of step. They also, with the new strategic planning framework, don't see victims as a standalone thing, which I always think means it's somebody else's problem. They do see it as something which is weaved through each of the systems that they bring together, so I think they are putting in place the right structures and systems to drive the progress needed.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And I'd really like to apologise both to our guests and to my colleagues that we've had to hurtle through this meeting, but we do have to have this confirmation hearing afterwards. I'm sure our guests are quite happy that they're going to be released now. But I would like to thank you for attending this morning and for answering our questions. Can I ask the committee to note the report and the discussion? Thank you. Can I ask the committee to note the monthly report from MOPAC? And can I also ask to delegate authority to me as chairman in consultation with party group lead members to agree any output arising from the meeting? Agreed. Thank you. Can I ask the committee to note its work programme for 24-25 Assembly year? Thank you. The next meeting of the committee will now be an extraordinary meeting of the committee and the confirmation hearing for the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime, which will take place at 11:30 a.m. today in the Chamber, City Hall. I have no urgent business, so that concludes today's meeting. Thank you. This is an extraordinary meeting of the Police and Crime Committee. Under Section 1.7 of the Authority's Standing Orders, I confirm that this meeting be called as a matter of urgency in order to hold a confirmation hearing for the Mayor's proposed appointee to the Office of Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime at its earliest opportunity, in accordance with Section 100B 4B of the Local Government Act 1972. Can I welcome everybody to the Police and Crime Committee meeting? Our main item of business today is to hold a confirmation hearing for the proposed appointment of Kaya Comer-Schwartz to the Office of Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime. Please make sure that your electronic devices are switched to silent mode to avoid any unnecessary interruptions this morning. Can I now ask our clerk, Lauren Harvey, if any apologies have been received for today's meeting?
Sorry, Chairman, thank you. We have received apologies for absence from the Deputy Chair, Assembly Member Roberts, for whom Assembly Member Bakari is attending as a substitute.
Thank you, Hina. Can I ask the committee to note the recommendations set out at item 3 and ask Assembly members if they have any other disclosable pecuniary interest to declare? No, thank you. Can I invite Kaya Comer-Schwartz to declare any interest relevant to the business of this meeting or in relation to her appointment to the Office of Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime?
None to
No, that's good. That's what we like to hear. Thank you. So that brings us to our main item. Can I welcome you, Kaya Comer-Schwartz, to the Mayor's nominee for the Office of Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime to this meeting. The committee will be putting questions to Kaya in relation to her proposed appointment. However, can I first ask the committee to note the background information circulated within the agenda for the meeting? Thank you. We will now move on to the question and answer session. So I'm going to start, Kaya. What experiences do you have overseeing issues related to policing and crime?
Thank you very much, Chair. I've spent my whole life in Islington, being the leader of Islington Council and serving my home borough. It's been a real privilege, but the opportunity to serve the whole of London on such an important issue to all Londoners, their safety and that of their families, businesses and the wider community, is one I could not turn down. I come to this role having worked my way over the course of a decade to becoming an elected leader accountable for an organisation of over 4,800 staff and serving 239,000 residents with an annual budget of £1.2 billion. I'm proud of what my team delivered in Islington over that time, making our borough a better place for our residents, businesses and visitors. That includes reform and improvement of our youth justice service, now one of the country's best, graded this summer by His Majesty's Inspectorate of Probation as outstanding, an outstanding Ofsted rating for children's social services, an investment and improvement of local services for victims and survivors of VORGs, which led to a 56% increase in the number of survivors being supported and referrals being made 15 times quicker, and being the highest rated council in London on the Healthy Streets scorecard for 4 years running. My approach to leadership and delivery is based on core principles. First, being focused on delivering meaningful improvements on our work for the communities we are privileged to serve. Being evidence-led in policy and decision-making, being inclusive and collaborative, recognising the contribution that everyone can make in achieving our goals, and ensuring that the voice of all communities and service users are heard in everything we do. I will bring these same principles to this new challenge of being Deputy Mayor of Policing and Crime, alongside a wealth of knowledge and experience of working in partnership with the Met and other London agencies for over more than a decade. A lot of excellent and important work has been done here at City Hall over the last 8 years to make our city safer in the face of very strong headwinds, including government austerity, the COVID-19 pandemic and a cost of living crisis. There is more to be done to realise our vision of a safer city for all. I couldn't be more energised and passionate about the opportunity to play my part in making this a reality. I look forward to discussing my background and ambitions further with you over the course of this session.
Good. Okay, thank you. And it is indeed a very prestigious job, so we want to make sure that you've got the background and everything else that would suit it. If I can just start with your CV. So you've got a BA in Politics and International Relations, and you finished that in 2007. And then the next thing that I see is from October 2012. So what was going on between 2007 and October 2012?
Sorry, it's a very long time ago, but I believe I was doing various agency jobs and getting into the workforce like many other young Londoners at the time. It was part of the recession as well, so it was particularly difficult. But yes, I worked in a number of charities after university.
I think this is what I'm trying to get at. What jobs have you had?
Oh, okay.
What specific jobs? I was disappointed not to be able to read that you'd gone into a specific area or what your jobs were.
I held several roles in the voluntary sector. I worked for some brilliant charities. I worked for Shelter, Centre for Mental Health, World Jewish Relief, and other charities in the charity sector, particularly around health and mental health.
Okay, and these were paid positions, so they were, yeah. You haven't put any of them down. It would have been really interesting for us to have read it. Normally CVs are quite thorough. So you then worked till I've got fundraising officer here from 2012 to 2016. Alongside being a councillor, quite a few of us are councillors and do other jobs or run businesses or whatever. I mean, that's what I did as an example. What was your substantive job when you were a councillor?
So when I was serving as a councillor, I was working alongside in the voluntary sector, as mentioned, so working at shelters, Centre for Mental Health, and then I became an executive member. And so in Islington, those roles are full-time positions.
Okay. So that's the voluntary sector mainly, not commercial or in the private sector particularly?
No. I mean, I worked in my gap year at an estate agent, but other than that, no. I've primarily worked in the voluntary sector.
Okay, thank you. It appears in the last few months that you've been something of a controversial figure, so I want to give you the opportunity to say no. One of your former colleagues is quoted in the media as saying you had upset a lot of people. I've got no problem with that myself, but would you say that that was a fair characterisation?
I think the characterisation of having to make difficult decisions as a leader is always something that, you know, you're not here as a leader to make everyone happy. You're here to make the best decisions based on the knowledge that you have, and I'm never going to shy away from that.
Yeah, no, you see, I love that answer. Upsetting people is never the end of the world. How have the levels of crime changed in Islington in the past year?
We've seen significant improvements in key areas. I'm particularly proud of the reductions we've seen in violent crimes. Notably from September in Islington in the last year, ending in September 24, we've seen notable reductions in violence against injury, down 13.4%, knife crime with injury, victims aged under 25 years old, personal robbery down as well, and burglary down as well.
Okay, because I've got that the crime was up by 3.4%. Do you recognise that?
Well, I'm sure that in some crime types there are, but I think it's important that, you know, in the most violent crimes we are seeing reductions, and I'm proud of the work that we've done in partnership with the local police to get there.
Yeah, I mean, because you're going to get this all over London. This is, you know, and sometimes the everyday crimes like burglary, robbery, etc. I mean, if you look at the amount of mobile phones, for instance, that have been stolen, that sort of thing obviously upsets Londoners, and you'll have to deal with that if you get this job. Did you support an Islington Council motion in July calling on the Mayor to stop the Met's use of, and I quote, Orwellian live facial recognition, which is a very important tool proven to reduce crime rates in the areas it's been used?
Chair, I know that you as a councillor know that motions are an important part of the tool of an arsenal of a council, but I think it's also important to recognise that they're about a stance, a political stance, and I recognise that the police do an exceptionally difficult job and need to use all of the tools in their equipment to do that. However, I think we all recognise that those tactics used have to be done ethically and proportionately, and I look forward to working hopefully with MOPAC to ensure that that's the case in using tactics like live facial recognition.
Yeah, I hear what you say, but did you support that motion?
Yes, I voted for the motion.
Yes, you see, I find that worrying. Personally, I'm very much for live facial recognition. It's a tool in the box that the police simply have to have in order to try and get these villains off our streets. I'm very disappointed that you supported that Islington Council motion calling for the Mayor to stop the Met's use of the Orwellian live facial recognition. So if they continue to use it, as if you are put in this position, are you happy for them to continue to use this Orwellian live facial recognition?
I think my role will be making sure that when using the police tactic that they are legally able to use, that they do that ethically and proportionately. Okay.
So that motion suggests that the Mayor tell the police to stop it, doesn't it?
It does call for, them to look at that further. And, I think that's important. And I think, I've heard you passionately look at, tactics like stop and search. I think it's always, it's part of your role as a committee to look at the tactics that the police use and make sure that they're applied properly, proportionately, ethically. And, when we're looking at new technologies, that's a new frontier for us. We need to make sure that we're doing that in the right way.
But you were calling on the Mayor to stop it. Do you think the Mayor should be interfering in the Met's operational independence?
No, I do not.
No, neither do I, and he says he doesn't, but that's what that motion was calling for.
Yes, motions call for a lot of different things. They're a political stance. They're a way of campaigning for change.
I know. I've been a councillor for 18 years. I do know that. But you're standing for this position. You've called for the Mayor to stop the Met's use of something, which would be calling for him to intervene in a Met operation, which obviously the Mayor shouldn't be doing. And also it referred to an Orwellian live facial recognition system, which I'm very pleased that they are using. But I've heard what you've said about that. I have got other things to come back on, but I'll let some of my colleagues have some questions now, and I'm going first to Assembly Member Moema.
Thank you. And it's really nice to see you here, Kaya. So I wanted to ask you if you could talk us through your experience of working with the police as community safety lead. And I'm also really interested to learn a little bit about your, you've reflected on working at World Jewish Relief. At this committee, we've talked about, particularly since last year, October the 7th, relationships between Jewish and Muslim Londoners. I know that's an issue in Islington, but if you could talk about kind of how that might apply to this role as Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime.
Thank you. Yes. When I was the portfolio holder for community safety, I worked very closely with the local police, had regular meetings with them, both strategic through our Safer Islington Partnership Board, but also regularly with the Borough Commander and superintendents, looking at all areas, obviously safeguarding, upcoming issues and wider strategic issues too. It's really important in a borough like Islington, where it has several transport hubs where it has a diverse community, that we do work in partnership. And I was interested in the committee's reflection on safeguarding earlier. That's something that I was really key to working with in Islington, and it was part of the reason we got outstanding in our children's services was our collaboration with the police in that area. Also your reflection on community cohesion. The committee will know that sadly Islington was the victim of a terrorism attack at Finsbury Park Mosque in 2017. I was the executive member for community cohesion there, so it has been the honour of a lifetime to work with our communities and the police in partnership in making sure that we do regular check-ins and reassurance patrols with all of our communities. I am a member of a synagogue myself, and I'm a practicing member of the Jewish community, and I know how deeply all of our communities have felt about what happened from October 7th and onwards. It's an issue that we've really tried to have very open and complex conversations about in Islington, and our work about community cohesion, building on the terrorist attack that we had, has been integral. I've worked closely with the Islington Faith Forum. A couple of weeks ago, we had a community cohesion event with all sectors of the community, from the fire brigade to local charities, looking at what more we can do on the back of the riots in the summer to go even further with our work on community cohesion and integration.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you also maybe expand on your experience in youth justice services and that transformation piece? We were talking this morning about child exploitation. I put a question to MOPAC, but there are wider issues in the Met about how they deal with children. But what would you infer from your role in youth justice that you think would be relevant to the role of Deputy Mayor?
I think it's something that I was really, when I started off as the executive member for children, it was something that the youth justice side of the role really was, something I was deeply passionate about, because at the time we were requires improvement. That is not, where local authority should be. And we were talking about, obviously some of the most vulnerable children in our borough not getting the services they need. And what we built from that stage was a service that is preventative, looking about how we can use our assets in the community, like our youth services and our targeted youth services, everything from football pitches to art classes, to engage young people in safe and meaningful activities, but also making sure that we had the prioritisation around that service to work in partnership with key statutory and voluntary services. So whether that be having an in-house service made up of CAMS, the local police and council officers, all working side by side, holding these cases. One of the things that I was really proudest to set up was our Parents Champion work. So actually having workers work with the parents of children at risk to support them in making sure that, the things that they were seeing at home were, they knew what the red flags were, they were alive to them, they were getting the support that they needed. And that piece of work was supported by the Violence Reduction Unit, and also won an LGA award because of the outcomes that we saw in that service. So, that's a trajectory where we laid the basis of collaboration, both internally and externally. We prioritised, we invested, and we saw the positive outcomes that we've seen this summer getting rated outstanding.
Thank you. Assemblymember Best.
Thank you. Morning, Kaya. Firstly, I have to raise a worrying affiliation from your CV and I hope Unmesh will join me in this, with watching a lot of Arsenal games. So I'm very concerned about that.
I was concerned about it last night, I can tell you.
But no, look, seriously, I was going to follow up on the line that I think Assembly Moema has followed up on really well, and get more of your understanding of how you're particularly going to work with Jewish and Muslim communities taking on from that very diverse borough of Islington and spreading that across London. But one thing I just wanted to follow up on is in July, you congratulated Jeremy Corbyn for winning in the election, and perhaps you thought that was a polite thing to do as the council leader. But I wanted to just you to be clear, and it seems like you will be with the Jewish community, that you also share that apology that Keir Starmer gave to Jewish communities for what happened under that leadership.
Yes, I mean, you're completely right, Assembly Member Best, that, it's my role as the leader of Islington Council to work with my key stakeholders like our local MPs, and regardless of political affiliation, as much as I want to work with all of you on this committee of various political affiliations, that is my job to continue to do that. But I personally and politically, I think it's very right that we acknowledge the pain that the Jewish community went through. And, I have a zero tolerance for anti-Semitism. My grandfather was a Holocaust survivor. I know where small deeds start. Some of the work that I've been most proud of in Islington is the work of our hate crime forum, making sure, that we have third-party reporting, that it's a consecutive, every year we make sure that we're working with communities of all faiths to make sure that they understand the importance of reporting hate crime. But I would extend that to all of our marginalised communities, whether we talk about women facing misogyny, whether we talk about the LGBTQ+ community, making sure that, work very closely with the LGBTQ+ forum in Islington, who are the victims of some really atrocious crimes. And it has to be followed up, and it has to be, all of our jobs is to make sure that we live in a place where everyone can feel safe and appreciated. So I would definitely continue to work in that stance.
Thank you, and I think those words would be much appreciated by many members of the Jewish community in London. I just want to tack back to the questions Assembly Member Hall was raising around that motion. And just to be very clear, you do now understand that it was the wrong thing to do to call for the Mayor to interfere with Met operations, and you do understand that as part of this role you won't be interfering with Met operations.
I very much understand the difference between strategic vision and steer to operational. I'm a council leader. Every day I'm regularly making sure that the chief exec handles the operational side of the work of the council, and I'm sitting the strategic steer.
And so would you regret that decision at that time to support that motion?
I think it's an important motion. I think the motion brings up some key issues which I've addressed through the chair around the ethical use of technology, the disproportionality that we need to make sure that isn't, I know communities deeply feel the effect, as you've talked about today, of over-policing. So I don't regret the stance in that sense, because those are key issues we need to look at.
But that isn't what the motion called for. It called for direct interference, and I really would hope, as part of wanting to do this role, that you would regret that motion and understand that was a mistake.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying that I can't regret the whole motion because I think it brings up key issues. However, I do deeply understand the difference between my role as a strategic person in this role and the operational day-to-day work of the Met.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you. You brought up hate. Can I ask you, have you ever worked with, delivered leaflets for, or been involved at all in Hope Not Hate, the organisation that so many people on the left, if I can put that, have worked with?
I don't believe so, no.
I think you'd know.
Well,
can you tell me?
I'm just trying to...
Hope Not Hate are a big organisation that the left wing absolutely know and understand. Have you ever worked with them and or delivered any of their leaflets?
I can guarantee that I've never delivered another leaflet from anyone else other than the Labour Party. I obviously work within a borough that Hope Not Hate operates, so I couldn't guarantee that they've never been at a public event that I've been at. But I would never deliver a leaflet for anyone else but the Labour Party.
Okay, thank you. Assembly Member Garbett.
Hi. Thank you for your responses so far. One of my questions So yeah, just to state my view on the use of live facial recognition, I do think it is really important to hear you talk about scrutiny of that tool. It's something that's operating largely without regulation. I've flagged it as a topic for the committee to look at. So if you're successful, it'd be great to work on you with the scrutiny of that tool that is being used outside of regulation. But my question is about just what you see as one of your, you've talked about a couple of things you've done, but what you see as one of your biggest successes in terms of crime and community safety, and particularly where you've challenged police leaders, such as the borough commander, to improve things for constituents. Thanks.
Thank you. I would definitely point to our work on violence against women and girls. It's something that I was exceptionally proud of. It's something that I, coming into the role, when I was working in the role overseeing our voluntary and community centre, really worked with the then executive member on community safety for, and then built on as I went through my time on the leadership of the council. You know, it was something that we worked regularly with the police on, prioritising that work, but also we made sure that we were working with the voluntary sector. We had big conversations about supporting the voluntary sector, but also supporting work around perpetrators, making sure that we had IDVAs in an increased investment in IDVAs, getting the NHS to come alongside us in that work so that we could have an uplift in IDVAs in key places like A&E wards, custody suites, so that that work could be done in a timely matter, and seeing the results of that, you know, doubling the amount of women and girls accessing services, making response times quicker. It's you know, we have daily multi-agency response meetings around violence against women and girls. It's something that we, you know, really championed through our organisation. We've got the DAHAD accreditation for our housing services, which is a huge piece of work that looks at every aspect of housing delivery and makes sure that all the officers are trained in domestic abuse. So I'm really proud that it was something that wasn't siloed, that the whole organisation got to see its role in the public health approach of tackling violence against women and girls, and that prioritisation saw real investment. And I know that that's something that Sophie, my predecessor, has really championed in MOPAC, and it's something I'm excited to continue if in the role.
That's really interesting to hear that kind of preventative approach and the doubling of people accessing support. But was there work within that with the local borough commander? Did it lead to any changes in kind of police practice specifically?
Yes, I mean, it was in our strategic meeting that we held regularly. It was sort of safeguarding children and violence against women and girls were always standard items in that. So we continued to have regular conversations about that, and also as chair of the Safer Islington Partnership and the VORG board, the police were invited to attend those meetings and sit alongside us in that work, making sure that they understood why we were prioritising the work, continually scrutinising sanction and detection rates and positive outcomes, and talking to the voluntary sector about what, you know, for women, sometimes positive outcomes mean a myriad of things, and really sitting alongside the police in their understanding of that.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks.
Assembly Member Bakari.
Thank you. And I just wanted to actually put on record that I was quite impressed with the 50% increase in number of survivors on your investment on violence against women and girls, and I hope we see that reflected in the work that you do in your if you get the new role as well. So my question is about personal challenges, and this is a tough job. Being the Deputy Mayor for Police and Crime, and your predecessor, she did have some experience. So when Sophie Linden became the Deputy Mayor, she'd already had home office experience, which you don't from your CV that you've provided us. This could be this lack of experience could be a personal challenge for this particular role. Could you, explain why you think that this, if this is a challenge, how you're going to deal with that, and if there are any other personal challenges with this particular role, considering your experience?
Thank you. I mean, I think you rightly credit my predecessor and her, amazing wealth of knowledge and experience. However, I think that's one type of experience. I come with over 11 years of experience in the local authority sector. I've held regional and national roles. On the back of that, a lot around health, but more widely in different areas. When the Casey report came out and Baroness Casey kindly came to speak to London leaders about their role in that, I stepped up. I took that back to my local authority. We were the first local authority to have a action plan on the back of the Casey review that worked alongside the police and the community about what Islington needed to see in a reflection of that work. I then took that work as being on the working group of London councils. So,
what about the challenges that that you may have to work on? There must be something that you're thinking, I'm going to have to work on this particular area to make sure that I really do make the best opportunity for this job. Is there anything that you're just thinking in terms of, there is some things that I'm lacking, I do need to work on this? There must be something that but you're being self-critical.
Well, I mean, I'm always trying to be a reflective and a learning leader, so it's really on me to get underneath the skin of the whole of the organisation, the complexity of the organisation. I think there's going to be significant challenges. I know, for example, the financial sustainability of the organisation of the Met is something really pressing. I know obviously there's huge cultural and reform issues that need working on as well as the really important role of improving community safety for London and the perception of community safety for London. I know that I have a lot to learn, but I'm excited about being able to do that and really getting under the skin of all of those things. I have a wealth of experience and knowledge about, structural reform, adaptable leadership, working in constraining times. But this is a new job, and there'll definitely be new things to learn.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a new role, new kind of challenge for you. I mean, when you were approached about this, who was it who actually said, would you be up for the job? Who actually said that to you? Who said, have you thought about taking up this role?
I was approached by the Mayor's office.
The Mayor's office? Just generally the Mayor's office? There wasn't any particular individual?
No, I was interviewed by a panel of people in the Mayor's office.
So the Mayor of London themselves hasn't actually approached you?
Yes, no, sorry. I was interviewed by a team of people from the Mayor's office, and when they thought that I had suitabilities, I then had a conversation with the Mayor. Before that process,
was there any individuals that came up to you and said, I think you should take this role in an informal way?
No.
So nobody's ever said to you, I think you should take this job up. There's an opportunity here for you.
I mean, I expressed my interest in it because it's such an important role for London, and I believe as a black woman who's the mother of 2 sons in this city, that my anxiety about the safety of all Londoners is something that I could really contribute to, and so I'm excited to work alongside all of you in challenging those big issues.
There's a lot of people who would argue that you're very well known within the Mayor of London's office already because of the position that you hold within the Labour Party, for example. What would you say if you were ever challenged on that particular issue in terms of your political affiliations, and if anyone said to you, of course you're going to get the job, you're well known within for the Mayor of London, he likes you?
Well,
good friends.
What I would say is I would hope that people knowing me within the Labour Party is on the basis of the work I've been doing for over a decade to improve things for Islington, to work regionally, cross-party with the LGA. I've got congratulations from a lot of different people in a lot of different sectors, a lot of different political parties. I wouldn't count anyone I work with professionally as a friend. I think, I'm grateful for the Mayor seeing my potential and my capabilities and asking me to go forward in this role, but that's not how professional organisations run. It's not, I don't think he put you through a hearing confirmation on the basis of that. I think he recognises my wealth of expertise and what a hard worker I am.
It's just good that you have an answer for that, because, there will be people who will question that. So thank you for your answer.
Thank you. Assembly Member Lord Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. What style of leadership will you bring to MOPAC? Because I think that's very important, how MOPAC's led.
What I would say is, first of all, that my main motivation is delivery and impact. That's what I want to see. I want to see improvement. I want to see delivery. I want to see impact in everything that we do. I'm a collaborative leader. I'm a motivational leader. I'm a data and insight person. If we're not got the evidence for it, why are we doing it? I want to push our organisation with the aims that we have all here to make London a safer place. And I'm really excited to get to know everyone within the MOPAC and Met and City Hall, because I know in the hearts of all of us we want a safer London, and I think there's a lot we can do with that common aim.
You say that, you've made comments this morning about the work you've done in the past and like to do in the future about the safety of women and girls in London. In your pack here, you talk about evidence-led and inclusive. So how inclusive was it to issue a tweet that said we cannot let a racist, climate change denying Tory be mayor? How inclusive was that? What level of leadership were you displaying there?
Well, I think it's really important, and as I'm sure all of you do, that the people that hold public office have a high level of integrity for all Londoners. I'm unashamed. I don't think that people with racist views or misogynistic views or any, views that would fuel or enable hate. And I think that political rhetoric sometimes is a real, as we saw in the riots earlier this summer, we have to all be really accountable when we hold public office about those views. And so I do think the standards of integrity of public office are important.
Yeah, but then I would put to you that this is very divisive, and you were in public office and are seeking another public office. If I was from the white community, or as I am a Tory, or as a black person who hates people who pick and choose their racism when it suits them, I would feel very put out by this. So again, how is this displaying what you're saying? You're saying about inclusivity, you're talking about integrity in public life, but you have issued this tweet which put a woman at great risk, great physical risk, and drives wedges between communities. So I'd ask you two things. One, would you like to take this opportunity to apologise to that woman, who happens to be the chair of this committee, for that tweet, again, which put her at great physical risk? I know for a fact, because I've also been a candidate for Mayor of London, so I know how it feels. And also, could you try to tell me how this displays an inclusive style of leadership?
I mean, if I've ever put anyone at risk, I would like to apologise. And I have to say as well, personally, obviously I know standing for public office and, holding public office, especially at the moment, does, with the public perceptions of that, is really important. And I wouldn't, I do challenge myself to hear views of other people. The work we've just been doing in Islington on community cohesion, I, wanted to make sure that that was an inclusive as possible event, and I've challenged our officers and our community from all sectors to make sure that we're going out and having conversations with people with different views.
I want to be very clear. I would like you to consider apologising for that particular tweet. That is the point here, because you issued a tweet that put another woman at great physical harm. You did that, nobody else. And you, in my opinion, should apologise for that. If you don't want to, that's fine. You're grown up, you can make your own decisions. But I think that tweet was hugely out of order. And you also said you challenge your officers to be inclusive. I would suggest you challenge yourself to be inclusive, because there's many people who now would believe they couldn't approach the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime in London on the back of that tweet and maybe some other activities that you've had online. So this role needs someone who could be approached by diverse communities. I think that's very important. The whole thing falls down if people can't speak to you. So again, I would like you to consider apologising for that particular tweet, and also consider how you challenge yourself to be more inclusive.
I think we should always all challenge ourselves to be more inclusive, and I would say, Lord Bailey, that on record that I would be welcome to talk to any communities. It's something I'm really excited to do in this role, is to get out across all of London and talk to, you know, various communities, various Londoners about how they are affected and what they need to see in terms of the improvement for London safety.
Yeah, but you still haven't made a decision to apologise for the tweet or not. I leave that with you, but I think it's something, so to my mind, you've refused to do that, which is fine, it's your prerogative, but I think it's something you really should consider. And this drives huge wedges between communities, and it was done by you in your very lofty position you're already in, and you'll be going to another lofty position carrying this as an evidence piece of how you intend to interact with other communities, which I think is a problem. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I just confirm I resent being called racist by somebody who's never met me, who doesn't know me, as well as a climate change denier. I think to put things like that out when you don't know somebody at all is abhorrent. I'll go on, since this has affected me badly, but there we go. Can I just ask you, before we go on to the next section, what do you think about the Chris Carver situation?
Can I just say, Chair, that I wouldn't want to have affected you badly, and I really do deeply understand, as a woman in public office, how difficult those issues are. So I would like to apologise to you, woman to woman, but I also would like to say that, you know, I do hope that we do get to know each other in this role and work closely together to improve things for Londoners and all Londoners. And I know that, you know, I've watched this hearing today, I've watched how you chair, and I know how important you see the views of all Londoners. So before I will move on now.
Well, I would like to thank you for that apology. The only thing I will say is, and I will say this, is hope, not hate, have put thousands, tens of thousands of pictures all over London with racist written across my face. And I knock on doors and I stand and I talk to black members of black Londoners, explaining that actually they've got their opinion of me through something they've read, which they admit to. This happened to me last week. Putting stuff out like that is very, very dangerous, because people automatically assume if they read it, it might be right. And this absolutely isn't right. And to be called a racist when you know you're not is one of the most abhorrent things that can ever happen to you. We'll move on, and thank you for your apology. But anybody else thinking that they can just do that without knowing a person, without knowing what they believe in, they should bloody well make sure they don't, because it has put me in danger and it is grossly unfair. But if you'd like to now tell me what you think about Chris Carver case.
I mean, I think it's really important that the jury has reached their decision following a full examination of all the evidence, and I think we need to respect that decision. I would like to, as Assembly Member Best acknowledged earlier, put on record my deep condolences to the Carver family. As a mother, I know that it's all our worst nightmares to lose a child. But I know that we are in a system of policing by consent, and it's important when someone loses their life due to police action that this is thoroughly and properly investigated. Firearms officers work tirelessly during thousands of operations daily under extraordinary pressure and carrying with them unique responsibilities, and often putting themselves in situations of great danger to keep us and other Londoners safe. I understand the impact that Chris Carber's death has had on London's communities, particularly the black community. This case sits within the context of long issues that the Assembly have acknowledged today of a lack of trust and confidence in the police, particularly within the black communities. And as Deputy Mayor for Police and Crime, I would work with the Mayor to support and hold the Commissioner to account on delivering what he set out in the new Met for London plan on improving that situation.
Okay, and I would like to say, I agree with you, to lose a child must be horrific. But I'd also like to say that my heart also goes out to the family of that officer who was named, and I will not name him here, who was named. He's been found not guilty. He's got a price apparently on his head. His family have gone through this for the last 2 years. Those officers do put themselves in danger. We would be in absolute trouble, to put it mildly, if they didn't pick up those guns for us, and it is for us. So whilst I do feel for anybody that loses a child, I also feel for that family that have gone through hell and are still going through hell, because apparently he's now on a police investigation about his job. I think if you're going to feel for one of them, we must feel for both families involved in this. Did you still want to come in, Assembly Member Best?
I think that was the question which I wanted to ask, and so I would again give you Kaya, and I agreeing with everything you said this so far on the Chris Carber case, just an opportunity to again talk about the particular officer and how you will reach out to officers and make sure they know they're supported. No officer in this city goes to work and wants to end that day knowing that they have been part of ending someone's life. No officer, I believe that. And if you believe that too, will you reach out to those officers and make sure they know they're supported? And that officer in particular, to make sure he knows that him and his family are supported.
Thank you, Assembly Member Beth. Yes, I mean, I spoke to the Commissioner this week, and I understand the extreme pressure and how these cases affect morale in the police. And I think, you know, some of the work that the Met's already doing in terms of training and standards, but also welfare and support for police is really important. You know, all public servants get into this work because they're motivated by improving the lives of the people they work for. And I know that, you know, that the police hold extreme responsibilities in doing some of the work that none of us would, you know, willingly do. You know, running towards danger is something that I can only imagine as someone who, you know, is in the family of that person, how stressful that could be. So I think we need to do all we can to ensure that the police have the right tools that they're within their structures to have that welfare and support office strongly embedded.
Okay, thank you. We're well on time, colleagues, which makes a change, doesn't it? So we've now got just over 40 minutes for the second part. Assembly Member Desai.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Kaya. So, Kaya, what do you think, what do you see your top 3 priorities for the role of Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime over the next 2.5 years?
Yeah, I would say my number 1 top priority has to be continuing to focus on the reduction of violent crime and the community safety of Londoners. I would say that my second priority has to be helping to get the MOPAC and Met on a sustainable footing financially. I know that there's huge challenges there, and we need to, one of the first things I want to do is to really look at what we have there and the intricacies of that budget. And I know there are particular constraints around workforce and other things. There's a lot to unpick there, but I know the challenge is significant over, and what coming from a local authority that had £400 million taken out of it from the government, I know how much pressure public services are under, and I'm used to working with difficult budgetary constraints in various sectors. Also, the political lead for the North Central ICB, which similarly the health service have had significant austerity impacts. So working with big budgets and seeing what we can do. But I also recognise over such a long time the there's no small fixes to be done anymore. Those budgetary constraints are really going to be difficult. So that's also what I would say was my second priority, and then my third priority. Hello? Oh, yeah. All aligns with the work that has been done by my predecessor and working, was mentioned before, the draft crime strategy coming forward, but also continuing the work that the new Met for London plan and the Casey review to work on reforming and improving trust and confidence within the police.
Okay, I think we've got questions coming up later on about the Met's finances and also about police reform. So you've given us told us about one or two of your personal attributes, but can you tell us more about what you personally would bring to this role to help address these challenges, and in particular the three areas that you outlined?
Yes, I mean, the first on ensuring that we have improvement in reduction of particularly violent crime, but under that umbrella, violence against women and girls, exploitation, knife crime is really important to me, and what I will bring to that is relentless tenacity. It has to be our number priority. It's something that, we're the capital city of the country. We're the gateway to the economy in a lot of ways, and we want to all live and be proud of the place that we work in, and community safety is the key priority that I have heard time and time again from residents. So we need to be making sure we use everything in our gift to improve that and continue the journey that I have already been so proud to witness as a local authority. What I would say in that is I also know that it can be no single person or organisation's role alone, and that's something that I think I really bring in spades, is a collaborative partnership working, galvanising. I've been the attendance of some great events here in City Hall around violence against women and girls, where it's brought loads of people from different sectors to have really constructive conversations about how to understand that sector, but also how to improve things, and I'm definitely going to continue to do that. And then on the second priority of sustainability, sustainability of organisations. As I said, I've worked for over a decade in many organisations within the public sector that have had to work in constrained times. And what I would say is, I know, that's about regular monitoring, it's about prioritisation, it's about making sure we're doing the right things for the right reasons and monitoring impact, taking tough decisions, but also it's also about we're in London, we have great convening power, also working under, I'm really delighted that we have a Labour government, and I know that we're one of their key missions as well, community safety and the safety of the UK, so working in tandem with them is something that I've got the networks and I'm excited to do, also working with other local authority leaders in that as well. And then on the last point, I think what I would say is I really see myself as a motivational leader, and so I really also am a respectful person. I really understand the deep value of the work that the police do day in, day out. I always say, if anything happened to me or my family, I would want justice in that, and the best people to help bring about that is a functioning police services that serve all of London. So I'm really, talking to the Commission earlier this week, I was really heartened to get to look forward to working with someone who really believes in that improvement journey and wants to see what he's put out in the new Met for London as something that we can work on collaboratively.
Thank you. And relentless tenacity. I like that.
Assembly Member Bakari.
Thank you. I'm pleased to hear about the priorities that you've been talking about. One update this committee is really keen to hear back about is the estate strategy, which has been promised for a very long time. Do you consider this to be a priority?
I really understand. I mean, talking I've just this week we're talking about our community centre review in Islington, and that is the estate of any organisation is key to the sustainability of an organisation. It's capital as well as revenue, and how you make sure that efficiencies are held in both spaces are really important. And I know from my own constituency there's been long conversations about the use of a police station in Islington, and so I understand that those things have taken a long time to get through, and I understand that obviously that's gone through 2 different commissioners, and that it feels to the committee, as you're outlining, that there's frustration in that area, but I think it needs to be looked at, and it's something, I'm not in the job yet, but hopefully if I am in the job, looking at that as part of the wider, piece around the sustainability of the organisation is something I'd be keen to get under the nose.
I mean, one of the things you were talking about when you were approached about this job and this role from the Mayor of London's team it'll be interesting to know whether they actually gave you any indication of any updates. This is a strategy, like I said, it's been, we've been waiting for a long time. Wimbledon Station, which has been saved by the local community there, and the current MP Paul Kohler has worked very hard on this. But then there are other stations like Teddington and Notting Hill, which has been closed down, and yet nothing has happened in those buildings. They're left to be empty when they could actually be used for really good social value use, like a GP surgery or for social housing. And I'm really pleased that you noted those down, because those are the particular stations that are, and others that we really need to have some answers for those particular communities. When you were questioned by the Mayor of London's team, did they give you any updates at all about any of these stations? Or any indication of concern from their questioning about this particular issue?
No, because the conversation was about my competency for the role, but it is something that I'm cognizant of, as I said, as from a local authority perspective in my own borough. I could name a station too, and that's why I've noted what you've said, but I understand your passion for it. I understand the frustration, and it's something that, as I get into the role, hopefully, I will endeavour to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm asking next, what crime rates are you most concerned about? So we're holding you to account. So if there was top of your list, what crime rates would it be?
I mean, I think obviously that it's important to acknowledge that that we have to be always really cognizant of the crimes that have a lot of impact. I
get that, but if you're looking at it, what is it that really bothers you personally? What are you really passionate about making sure gets better?
I want to see a reduction in violent crimes, so under that I'd put a reduction in knife crime across the city. Sadly this week I had a child again lose their life to knife crime, and I know having to, every time as a leader, I promised the families of all of the victims of children we lost in the borough that I sat down and I met with them, and I know how deeply painful that is. So on a personal level I want to make sure that we're getting that right, and the exploitation of children as well. Within that, I think violence against women and girls is something that, I was proud to see that the Mayor of London this week went into primary schools talking about what we need to do to reduce misogyny within schools.
Yeah.
And
no,
using
I was just concentrating on one, because obviously we're going to be asking you these questions in the weeks to come should you get this position. And so it's knife crime. So what percentage would you think, right, I'm going to really work with the Met, with MOPAC, to get this down to what level?
I think I would want to go away and really consider that. I think having MOPAC work alongside me on a real, I think with the police and crime strategy coming up, I want to really go away, consider all the matrix, consider all the data, and come back with a stretching but realistic target in that area.
Well, if you get the position, perhaps I can ask you again next time and you will give me a proper answer to that, because you'll have time to go and look at that. What do you think is the biggest opportunity for the Deputy Mayor for policing and crime over this coming 3.5 years?
Oh, I have to pick one.
Go for it.
Oh, there's just so many opportunities. You know, we've got, as I said, the policing crime strategy. We've got the engagement strategy.
Yeah,
I know as well that
the biggest. What would you think at the end of 3.5 years? My God, I know other things may have gone wrong, but I really got that right. What would it be?
I would really like to see the improvement around trust and confidence in the police. I think it's a huge task, but if I move the dial on that, I'd be really proud of myself.
Yeah, and it's vital, and I absolutely applaud that, because we've got to get trust and confidence up quite substantially. We've got to make sure that people start to trust our police, and that'll help them. So what are your particular skills that you'd bring to that role to help improve trust and confidence? What would be the first thing you'd do to help that?
Well, the first thing I want to do is get out, talk to the Met, really understand, go out with them, really understand what they're facing currently, but also talk to our community representatives. And I note Lord Bailey's challenge earlier, that not just the usual suspects, and also the committee's challenge around making sure that we're engaging with young people as well. I think it's really important that you don't ever take one source as the only source of data. As I said, I'm a real data and insight person, so I want to be making sure that MOPAC is really assisting me in understanding the strategic direction, but also the data underneath that. But I also want to be triangulating that with what I'm hearing out and about, and making sure that we're getting the real kind of richness of the perception of our residents, of our local businesses.
So how long do you think it's going to take you? Because you're at a standstill start, really, having, and I go back to what Assembly Member Bakari was saying, you haven't got any background in any of the real work that goes on all throughout London, so you've really got to hit the ground running. So what of your skills do you think you will bring to making sure that you then get on top of this very, very quickly?
I mean, what I would say is I don't recognise that I don't have any background in this. As I said, I've been a local authority leader for over 3 years now. I sit on London councils. I've worked with the previous lead on community safety in this area, hearing from all sections of London about how important this issue is for London. And as a Londoner, I was born here, I've lived here, I raised children here. I do understand. I've also lived in London all my life, and I hate to say it's a damn sight longer than you have. I wish it weren't. I've also been a council leader and lead on policing and crime. It's my absolute passion. But when I came here, I realised just how much more there was to it than this. When I came on this committee, I suddenly realised that whilst Harrow was my world, and policing and Harrow really mattered, and I knew the offices, I knew it inside out. When I came to this committee, I realised how very little I did know, and I had to learn through. I learnt from Len, I learnt from others, Caroline Pidgeon that was on here, that had been on here for years as well. And I realised just how very little I knew. And I'm just wondering if you realise, because we're very much similar, except I'm much older than you. I just wonder if you realise the enormity of this job, because I most certainly didn't until I came and sat on this committee and realised the breadth of it. Yeah, I mean, I would say that, coming from holding a portfolio, going on to being leader, there's always, a lot more that you learn behind the role of a different role, right? But what I would say is I'm a quick learner and I'm a dedicated learner, and I wouldn't take this job if I didn't know the enormity of the challenges ahead of me. I wouldn't take this job if I didn't think I had something to contribute in this space. And as I said, I am passionate, I'm tenacious, I'm dedicated, and I hope that you'll see that, and I'm sure you'll recognise those qualities.
Yep, and we all wish you well if you get the position, because it's so very important. The problem is, of course, we never know, you don't know what you don't know. But I'll move on because of time reasons. Assembly Member Best.
Thanks, Kai. Obviously, you know the Met is going through massive change and reform. Could you talk a little bit to your experience with delivering effective change under financial pressure?
Yes, I mean, as a local authority, I think local authority leader, all of our services have been under huge economic pressures. As I've said previously, we had £400 million taken out of our core budget. You know, our overall budget is £1.2 billion, so you recognise how significant that has been. So all of our services and the complexity of Londoners and Islington have increased in that time. So, you know, whether it be adult social care or children's social care, the complexity of cases, the expectations of Londoners rightly have all increased. So I'm used to delivering improvement under that guise. And, you know, I've talked about the work that we did in youth justice, to go from requires improvement to outstanding. But similarly, in housing services, you know, we had significant challenges. You know, we had some really stark reports in that area, and I don't shy away from challenges. You know, I've used those reports to really shine a light on what were those challenges. I'm not a defensive person. I'm up for the learning. So I was really key to ensuring that both officers and politicians understood that when you get challenges, it's an opportunity to go further and prioritise. And I would bring that to this role as well. I think that, you know, the work that MOPAC's already done in working with the Met to commission some amazing pieces of work and research to highlight the issues and challenges in those services is really important, so that everyone knows what they're being held accountable for. And I'm really passionate about getting to know all of those things and helping be part of that improvement transformation journey.
Thanks. And what did you take away from... Bless you. And what did you take away from the Casey review in respect of MOPAC?
I mean, I understand, I don't want to assume what you're alluding to, Assembly Member Best, but I think that it's really important from the Casey review that it was a jointly commissioned review, but it also talked about
Just to speak specifically about the MOPAC, what you took away about MOPAC.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a huge organisation. I think it's a complex organisation. I think the relationships between MOPAC and the Met that the Casey review points out is something obviously that I've read, I want to get to know and understand more about. And it's also really important, I think, that MOPAC is seen as you know, beyond this committee, and, you know, to normal people as part of the solution in doing that. And I think there's a lot of work that has been done that is brilliant, and I'm excited to build on, but also ensuring that normal Londoners know that MOPAC is part of that trust and confidence duty is really important.
I mean, it wasn't a difficult relationship or complicated. The Casey review called the relationship dysfunctional between the Met and MOPAC. That's not a funding issue, that's purely governance and an issue that the Deputy Mayor should work on. And so I'm concerned that you allude to the great work. You know, I think we all respect Sophie for different reasons, but I would like to know what you want to do differently to tackle the dysfunctional relationship between MOPAC and the Met.
I mean, I think relationships are key to any improvement. I think they're the foundation of all good working. And yes, I thought, Assembly Member Best, that is what you were referring to, the part around dysfunctionality. And, you know, I think that has to be something that's improved. It has to be, because we're all, you know, galvanised around the safety of Londoners. So those relationships must improve, and I'm excited to learn more. You know, I'm someone who wants to talk to all people and getting their insights on that. What I would say, as a local authority, I've worked, and on all the boards I've sat on, I've worked under real stringent governance and constitutions. I have a real working expertise in that, from school governors to, working on national boards. I really understand the importance of governance. So I think it's, something that I will really bring rigour to in looking at that.
So would it be of concern to you that the police are not turning up to these meetings? And is that something that you would work to try and help us improve?
I mean, I understand that it's very important that you are democratically elected as this assembly, and you hold real importance as council. Sorry, I'm going to need to learn to shift my language. But the chair has said, the expertise that she's learned across this committee, and I will definitely talk to the commissioner about the importance that you feel him being here directly would have.
Thanks. I think a talking has happened. I think it needs to be really quite direct, because we are missing something here with the governance of London. And too much is falling on a London board, which was not supposed to replace this committee, but that is how it feels right now. And we are missing a massive puzzle piece in the governance. And so I would hope, and I'm really glad to see you picking the pen up, that is something that would be really important. And unfortunately, I was glad you said to Assembly Member Hall earlier that about you don't mind upsetting people. That might be the first upsetting you have to do.
I'll definitely revert back and talk to him about that.
Thank you. Assembly Member Garbutt.
Thank you. Just to keep on the theme of reform, so you previously said that an organisation that can be called institutionally racist, sexist and homophobic is simply not acceptable for policing a borough as wonderfully diverse as Islington. So I just wondered what actions you'll be taking to make sure that the Met is no longer institutionally racist, sexist and homophobic.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the Baroness Casey review was unequivocal in its research and its findings around the areas of institutional racism, homophobia and misogyny within the Met, and that it must be rooted out, and it must be, the case for whole-scale systematic change is evident and is long overdue, but also huge wholesale reform and change takes time. We're talking about real complexity from, the committee noted earlier, from recruitment to retention to training to budgets. It is an ecosystem that needs to be understood, and also understanding that these are public sector workers doing their best to protect the people of London, and in that, we as the kind of holders of that system, putting the right prioritisation, the right systems in to support that journey. We need to make sure that we're doing that. And yes, I was, one of the things I was proud of when I took the office of leader of Islington Council is I changed our logo for a fairer Islington towards a more equal Islington. I think we need to be really clear in our North Star of the importance of equality for all, and I say that with the widest definition of it. So it is something that I'm deeply passionate about, but I also, think that we need to be supportive, motivational, understanding, but also keeping people accountable to the change that is needed. And I know that we're coming up to 2 years in March on the Casey review, and I'm sure that that's something that the committee will be discussing, and I'm looking forward hopefully to be part of those discussions and thinking about where we are now and what more we need to do in that space.
Yeah, and you would have heard the discussion we were having earlier around the race action plan, because obviously I was quite concerned there's not like a clear urgent date of pushing forward for all of those actions. So yeah, it's just making sure that all of those things are pushing in the same direction. I'm aware of time, so I'm going to move on to my next question, which was just about how the Mayor talks about a public health approach to crime, and you've focused on that quite a lot, and a lot of your experience talks to kind of that wider prevention of violence and crime and keeping Londoners safe. Within the context of today, the ONS has released data showing that drug deaths have once again increased to 5,448 across the country, a significant increase from 2022. In October 2020, you were reported as saying that until national changes in drugs legalisation, we're in a very powerful economy that exploits children, and we use as many means to do that in an economic model. And then when pushed on legalisation, you said you would go for legalisation because of the industry needs regulating, which I agree with. And I just was going to ask how you were thinking of bringing this public health approach to drugs as part of your role as Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, and I know Assembly Member Garbutt, coming from a health background, you understand the importance of this. I think, you know, I obviously working and living in a borough, it's in the middle of the city with significant transport hubs. I see this challenge day in, day out. And what I would say is, you know, I think that this is an area that we need to use all of the tools to our disposal to get right. I don't think that this is an area that you can arrest your way out of. And I do see it as an economic system. You know, I think that the work that I've worked alongside in Islington and led around getting health money to get improve the services, outreach services, homelessness services, drug intervention services, to work with people in addiction is really important. Alongside that, you know, the enforcement of you know, drug taking, drug dealing, and as well as, you know, housing, you know, employment services. This is an area that you need to really take a holistic approach to. And also, for me, it is a market. It is an economic market. It's a clear supply-demand thing that you need to, therefore, be working in a preventative space of reducing the amount of people within active addiction so that there's less demand for it. But also, it's something I'm interested to work in as well, is on the supply side. I've, you know, seen that from a borough perspective, that, you know, there's low-level drug dealing that is coming from somewhere, you know, and how we're, you know, using the National Police Agency to really tackle that supply market is something that I'm keen to look at.
Okay, thank you. We've got just less than 10 minutes and 3 of you asking questions, so if you could keep everything as tight as you can, please. Assembly Member Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, Kaya. Kaya, you were listening this morning to the session prior to this, and you will have heard me pick up on the issue about the involvement of young people and their views, which is absolutely essential to what's happening to the Met. So, using your extensive experience, how would you ensure that MOPAC listens to all Londoners?
I think it's, I mean, first of all, I think it's creating the spaces that can happen for that to happen. So one of the things that I was really proud of during our work in reforming youth justice is bringing young people to the table. So we always had on our youth justice board a section for young people to talk about that, and I learned so much from that. I learned about the experience of a young person in Feltham who was given, it was some time ago now, but was given no educational support other than colouring in. What does that say for the prospects of that young person? Eastman last week, I sat with our care leavers to understand their experience of what was happening around housing. There is not a conversation that you do not learn from with someone who has expertise from experience, and that's something I'm deeply passionate about. And, you know, I was listening to Kenny from MOPAC talk about co-production earlier, and I think it's really important that that is not a word, that that is something that's really adhered to, and something I was really proud of in my work in Islington was about community power and understanding the lived experiences of Londoners, of Islingtonians in devising change. So that's definitely something that I want to bring into this role. But I think it's not good enough to invite people to things. I think you need to be out and in those communities and listening. That's something that, it's a strange example, but in the local authority, it's not good enough to have people have an email address to your housing services and raising issues there. Where is your caretakers? Where are your concierge? Where are your officers, housing officers, going out into estates and talking to people and listening to people and, making sure that that is as important data as what's coming into an inbox. So that's really something I'm passionate about. I know that the community engagement strategy is something that Sophie has flagged with me for renewal. So that's something I'm really passionate about getting involved with, hopefully.
Thank you. And you've already spoken.
Can this be very brief? We've got 5 minutes and 2 people still to ask.
You'll like this. Kaya, you've spoken about this committee and the importance of this committee and the fact that we are elected representatives. Sophie committed to being here frequently. Would you commit to that as well?
I can be super brief, Chair. Absolutely.
Excellent, and a very good question. Thank you. You're quite right. I did like that. Assemblymember Deval.
Let's go to the areas of partnerships. As a role in the role of Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime, involves convening partners and organisations that may not fall within MOPAC's control or remit. How would you influence these other partners to work with you to achieve your goals?
And I think that that is something that, as a leader of a council, was one of the greatest powers that I had, is convening, really bringing people together. And I think in this role, if I got it, that was something I'd be passionate about, because I think, we want to get beyond like the usual conversations in this. What is the business sector saying about community safety? What is, what could we learn from the built environment around community safety? There's so much outside of, what we might see as our usual transactional relationships around community safety that we need to really convene and to listen. But I think what's really important is it goes beyond convening. I don't want to have conversations or meetings. I know we all, as politicians, have lived through many a meeting where great discussions have happened. And then, so for me, it's about how do we use those conversations to build partnerships on, and have those partnerships have key deliveries about them that, motivate us all. I really believe that our greatest strength is our joint endeavour in these things. So for me, it's about bringing people together, being clear on what we're working on, and feeding back to them about we've got here, where can we go further. So that's something, if I got this role, I'm passionate about doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Assemblymember Lord Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Chair. So you talked about budgets earlier on. The Met's budget and MOPAC's budget are distinct and different. MOPAC is funded very well, actually. Will you commit to a review, an external review, on how MOPAC is spending its money? That's my first question. And my second question is...
Quick.
Oh, sorry. Well, I wonder if you interrupted. And my second question is, will you come back in a year's time for a review if you get the position on how well you are doing? Should you get the role?
Can I answer backwards?
Yeah.
So yes, on the first, I've committed to coming back to the committee frequently, but happy to, I think that's one of the key roles of this committee is accountability. So
annual review of your performance. Thank you for that commitment. And on and the MEP and the MOPAC's budget, an external examination of MOPAC, a review.
I mean, what I would say is I'm not in a role yet, so I don't want to commit to something that I either... Should I get the role exactly? So I would go away. I know that was something that you put on MOPAC earlier. It's something that I want to go away and understand more.
Okay, and my last thing is, you said you favour legalising of drugs, but the mayor doesn't. How are you going to deal with that tension?
I'll be clear that I worry about the current drugs economy. I know that this is something that there was a piece of work commissioned on. I know that it's, important that we look at these issues in the round. I believe that, the current system around drugs isn't, having the outcomes we want. Assembly Member Garbett said we're seeing an increase in drug deaths. I believe it's key to some of the other crime types we're seeing around knife crime, around exploitation of children. I think that this is a key area to look at.
So we've got to stop now, but that's an explanation of your position. I'm asking how you'll deal with the tension between your public stated view and the mayor's differing view. But I think that's something we may return to in the future.
I think we definitely will, and I'm shocking because over the page was Assembly Member Desai's name, which I missed. So I beg your pardon. You are the last one. Be brief, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'll try. So, Kaya, what experience do you have of influencing decision makers in government and elsewhere to ensure that you can deliver on your commitments? I know you told us about your roles at the LGA and London councils.
Yeah. I think one of the things I'm proud of as leader of Islington Council is that we've been at the forefront of significant policy changes, whether that be the extension of the household support scheme recently, the work that we've done that has been intrinsic to the conversations on housing and right to buy and landmark cases on valuation and planning, but also the work we've done on inclusive economies and the work that I'm really glad that the Mayor of London saw and extended to the whole of London around free school meals for all primary school children. So I know that the work that we do here in this committee and in this area, if I was to get the role, is so important because we're the capital city, and so policy improvement here will inform, national policy and also hopefully even further.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can I thank you, Kaya Comer-Schwartz, for attending today's meeting. You are welcome to leave or observe the rest of the discussion from the public gallery if you so wish. The committee is now required to make a decision on its recommendation to the Mayor as to whether or not the nominee should be appointed to the office of Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime. As agreed previously with the panel, I'm going to adjourn so that we can have a brief discussion and then we'll come back. I'll make it clear what our views are. Are we all happy with that? Thank you. After deep discussions with my colleagues, we have decided that it to be agreed not to object to the appointment of Kaya Comas-Schwartz as Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime, but to write to the Mayor to provide comments regarding the proposed appointment. Now, our clerk, Lauren, is going to read what we will be sending to the Mayor.
Thank you, Chairman. So the committee would like to include in its letter to the Mayor that whilst the committee recognises Kai's experience as a community and borough leader, there are some concerns about her leadership in related to governance and budget in a police setting outside of borough-based policing. There are also some concerns about her ability to scrutinise and hold the Met to account related to previous experience. The committee would like to request some transparency in the training and support the Deputy Mayor will receive throughout her appointment, and would also like to include the commitment to hold an annual review in 1 year's time.
Thank you, Lauren.
And
Thank you.
sorry, Chairman, and that we will also include that is a majority view of the committee.
Thank you. I was going to say that, but it was the majority. So thank you. A letter will be sent to the Mayor following this meeting to confirm the committee's recommendations. And so that concludes today's meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.